Hey guys. This is what if Naruto could copy any jutsu. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 1. The Failure Who Wasn't. 3 hours in, and Training Ground 3 smelled like blood and chalk dust. Uzumaki Naruto had long since stopped feeling his hands. His jacket was around his waist, his hair plastered flat, and he was staring at Iruka like the man was the only fixed point in a world that kept moving. Iruka pressed his lips together. He'd been doing that a lot lately, that thin, unhappy line that meant he was choosing his words carefully, or giving up on choosing them at all. Again? Naruto demanded, not asked. His hands were already rising, fingers trembling from the exertion of 3 hours of continuous practice. Naruto, you've attempted the clone technique 47 times today. Iruka's voice was measured, the way one might speak to a wild animal cornered and desperate. Your chakra reserves are completely depleted. If you push any further, then it'll be 48. Naruto's fingers formed the seal, ram, then snake, then tiger. Chakra stirred in his depleted coils like the last dregs of water in a drought-stricken well. Bunshin no jutsu! A puff of smoke erupted beside him. When it cleared, a pale, sickly duplicate lay sprawled on the ground, its form wavering like heat shimmer off summer stones. One of its arms was bent at an impossible angle, and its eyes, milky and unfocused, stared at nothing. Naruto's jaw tightened. You're forcing too much chakra into the technique, Iruka said, his sandals crunching against the grass as he approached. The clone technique requires precise, minimal amounts. For someone with your reserves, it's like trying to fill a teacup with a waterfall. Then teach me something else. The words came out sharper than Naruto intended. He saw Iruka flinch, subtle, barely perceptible, but there, and hated himself for causing it. Iruka was one of the few people who actually looked at him, who saw him rather than the thing they all whispered about when they thought he couldn't hear. The academy curriculum. The academy curriculum is failing me. Naruto's hands dropped to his sides, fingers curling into fists. I've watched every other student in class perform this jutsu. I've memorized the hand seals. I know the theory. I know everything you've taught us about chakra molding and shape manipulation. But no matter what I do, I can't make it work. Iruka was silent for a long moment. The evening breeze rustled through the trees surrounding the training ground, carrying with it the distant sounds of the village, merchants calling out their wares, children laughing, the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer. There's a reason the clone technique is the standard for graduation, the instructor said finally. It tests fundamental chakra control. If a student can't demonstrate that baseline ability, they're not ready for the responsibilities of a genin. I can do everything else. Naruto's voice cracked on the last word, and he hated that too. Hated how young and desperate it made him sound. The transformation technique, the substitution technique, I passed those. I can throw kunai with the best of them. My taijutsu scores are in the top third of the class. But one technique, and none of that matters? The rules exist for a reason. Rules. Naruto spat the word like it was poison. Rules that don't account for someone like me. Iruka's expression shifted, something complicated moving behind his brown eyes. Naruto had seen that look before, on the faces of villagers who would serve him at restaurants but refused to meet his gaze, on shop owners who would accept his money but count it twice, on parents who would pull their children close when he walked past. But on Iruka, it was different. There was no fear in it, no barely concealed disgust. Just sadness. Show me, Iruka said quietly. Naruto blinked. What? The transformation technique. Show me. For a moment, Naruto hesitated, searching his sensei's face for some sign of mockery or trap. Finding none, he brought his hands together. The seal came as naturally as breathing, dog, boar, ram, and he felt his chakra surge outward, wrapping around his form like a second skin. Henge! Smoke billowed and dissipated, and where Naruto had stood, there was now a perfect replica of the third Hokage, down to the liver spots on the backs of his hands and the precise shade of his ceremonial robes. Iruka circled him slowly, studying the transformation with the critical eye of a trained instructor. He reached out and tapped the pipe in the Hokage's hand, then examined the hat's embroidered kanji. Perfect, he murmured, more to himself than to Naruto. Absolutely perfect. The level of detail is... I've never seen an academy student produce a transformation this precise. Naruto released the technique, reforming in his own skin with a soft exhale. So the transformation requires significantly more chakra control than the clone technique. Iruka's brow furrowed, his analytical mind clearly working through a puzzle that didn't quite fit together. It shouldn't be possible for you to perform one flawlessly while failing the other completely. Yeah, well. Naruto shrugged, though the gesture lacked its usual defiance. Welcome to my life. Iruka was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet, the silence of someone reconsidering long-held assumptions. He looked at Naruto, really looked at him, and for a moment, the 12-year-old boy thought he saw something shift in his teacher's expression. Wait here, Iruka said. I need to retrieve something from the archives. Before Naruto could respond, the instructor had already turned and disappeared in a swirl of leaves, the Shunshin no Jutsu carrying him away toward the academy building visible above the tree line. Naruto stared at the spot where Iruka had stood, then sighed and dropped onto the grass, lying flat on his back with his arms spread wide. The sky above was beginning to darken, orange fading to purple at the edges of his vision. A few early stars blinked into existence, distant and indifferent. He tried to remember the first time he'd seen someone perform the clone technique. It had been Suzuki Ami, during their second year at the academy, a civilian-born girl with brown hair and an eager-to-please smile. She'd stood at the front of the class, performed the hand seals with textbook precision, and produced 3 identical copies of herself. The class had applauded. Iruka had marked something on his clipboard. Ami had returned to her seat with a self-satisfied smile. And Naruto had watched. He remembered watching so intently that his eyes had started to water, memorizing every movement of her fingers, every subtle shift in her stance, the way her chakra had flickered, blue and faint, at the moment of technique activation. He'd felt something then, something he couldn't quite name. A kind of pulling sensation behind his eyes, like his mind was trying to reach out and grasp something just beyond his perception. When it had been his turn to attempt the technique the following week, he'd reproduced Ami's hand seals exactly. Not the generic academy standard, Ami's specific interpretation, with the way she held her fingers slightly closer together on the snake's seal and the half-second pause she inserted between ram and tiger. He'd failed. The chakra had surged out of him like a broken dam, producing a twisted mockery of a clone that had dissolved before it fully formed. But something else had happened too. In the instant before failure, just as his chakra had begun to take shape, Naruto had felt the technique. Not understood it, he already understood it intellectually, but felt it, the way one might feel the heat of a fire or the chill of winter wind. He'd known, with absolute certainty, that he could reproduce the exact technique Ami had used. He just couldn't do it with the chakra he had. It was like owning a detailed blueprint for a delicate clockwork mechanism but being given only a hammer and raw iron with which to build it. The knowledge was there. The tools were wrong. Naruto had kept this to himself. He'd long since learned that being different, being more different than he already was, only invited more whispers, more sidelong glances, more parents pulling their children away. The sound of rustling leaves announced Iruka's return. Naruto sat up to find his sensei holding a worn scroll, its edges frayed with age and its surface marked with the kind of security seals the academy reserved for classified materials. What's that? Naruto asked, curiosity momentarily overriding his exhaustion. Iruka didn't answer immediately. He sat down cross-legged across from Naruto, placing the scroll on the ground between them. His hands rested on his knees, and when he spoke, his voice was carefully measured. When you perform the transformation technique, what do you feel? Naruto frowned. What do I feel? I don't know. I just do it. Think about it. Walk me through the process. Naruto closed his eyes, reconstructing the sequence in his mind. I form the seals. Dog, boar, ram. I picture what I want to transform into. Then I push my chakra outward and... He trailed off, searching for words to describe something that felt as natural as breathing. And I become it. Not just look like it, become it. I can feel the Hokage's robes against my skin. I can smell the tobacco from his pipe. It's like putting on a second body. When he opened his eyes, Iruka was staring at him with an expression Naruto couldn't read. That's not how the transformation technique is supposed to work, the instructor said slowly. It's a genjutsu-adjacent ninjutsu that creates an optical illusion around the user's body. You're not supposed to feel anything different. The transformation is entirely visual. Oh. Naruto blinked. I didn't know that. No, I don't suppose you would. Iruka reached for the scroll, breaking the security seal with a pulse of chakra. I spent the last 20 minutes in the restricted archives, looking for something I remembered reading years ago. A report filed during the Second Shinobi World War by a field medic named Yakushi. The file noted an anomalous chakra phenomenon observed in certain individuals under extreme stress. He unrolled the scroll, revealing dense columns of handwritten text and complex diagrams. Naruto leaned forward, but the technical language was beyond his academy education. Most people, Iruka continued, learn jutsu through a combination of instruction, practice, and muscle memory. They memorize hand seals, study chakra theory, and refine their techniques through repetition until the neural pathways become automatic. It's a slow, methodical process that can take months or years to master even relatively simple techniques. I know all this, Iruka-sensei. I'm getting there. Iruka tapped a diagram near the bottom of the scroll, a simplified representation of the human chakra system with certain points highlighted in red. But there have been documented cases, rare, incredibly rare, of individuals who can bypass this process entirely. They observe a technique, and their chakra system adapts to reproduce it. Naruto's throat went dry. What do you mean, adapts? Exactly what it sounds like. They see a jutsu performed, and their chakra coils restructure themselves to match the necessary configuration. No practice, no repetition, just immediate, instinctive replication. Iruka's gaze was intense now, focused on Naruto with an almost uncomfortable scrutiny. The field medic who wrote this report theorized it was a survival mechanism, something that emerged in shinobi with unusually dense or malleable chakra networks. The ability allowed them to rapidly acquire enemy techniques in the heat of battle. Are you saying? Naruto's voice came out barely above a whisper. Are you saying I can copy jutsu? I'm saying it's possible. Iruka's tone was careful, measured, the tone of a scientist presenting a hypothesis rather than a conclusion. Your transformation technique shouldn't be as perfect as it is. Your chakra control in that specific area shouldn't be possible given your control in other areas. And the way you describe the feeling of transformation, that level of integration suggests something beyond normal technique acquisition. Naruto's heart was pounding. Somewhere in the depths of his mind, a voice that sounded suspiciously like the villagers who despised him whispered that this was wrong, that anything special about him was something to be feared and hated. But a larger voice, the voice that had kept him going through years of loneliness and rejection, was screaming with hope, which he didn't fully trust yet. But why can't I do the clone technique then? I've watched it hundreds of times. Iruka nodded, as if this was the question he'd been expecting. Because copying the form of a technique isn't the same as being able to execute it. From what I can tell, your ability allows you to perfectly replicate the chakra patterns and configurations of any jutsu you observe. But the execution still depends on the chakra you have available. The waterfall and the teacup. Naruto murmured, understanding dawning. Exactly. You know exactly how the clone technique should be performed, probably better than any academy student in history. But your chakra reserves are simply too vast to modulate down to the level the technique requires. It's not a flaw in your ability. It's a mismatch between the technique and your capabilities. So I really am. Naruto swallowed hard. I really can't be a genin. Because of something I can't control. Iruka smiled, and it was a real smile, warm and genuine in a way that made something in Naruto's chest ache. That's not what I said at all. The instructor reached into his equipment pouch and withdrew a kunai. How much do you know about the shadow clone technique? Naruto's brow furrowed. Shadow clone? That's a jounin level technique, isn't it? Creates actual solid clones instead of illusions. I've seen the ANBU use it during the village security demonstrations. Correct. And do you know why it's classified as jounin level while the basic clone technique is academy standard? Because it requires more chakra? Not just more. Iruka's smile widened slightly. The shadow clone technique requires massive amounts of chakra, enough that most shinobi would collapse from exhaustion after creating just one or two. The technique divides your total chakra equally among yourself and all clones, which is why it's considered forbidden for regular use. But for someone with your reserves. The implication struck Naruto like a physical blow. You think I could learn it? He breathed. You think I could pass with the shadow clone instead of the regular clone? I think, Iruka said carefully, that we've been trying to force you into a box you were never meant to fit. The academy curriculum is designed for average students with average chakra reserves. You're not average, Naruto. You've never been average. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Naruto felt something hot and painful well up behind his eyes. He blinked rapidly, forcing it down, refusing to let his sensei see him cry like some weak child. Can you teach me? His voice was steadier than he felt. The shadow clone technique? Iruka's expression shifted, a flicker of something like guilt passing across his features. I can show you the hand seals. But I can't perform it myself. I don't have the chakra for more than a single clone, and even that would leave me unconscious. You'd have to figure out the practical application on your own. That's fine. Naruto was already standing, newfound energy flooding through his exhausted body. That's perfect. Just show me once. Iruka rose to his feet, tucking the ancient scroll back into his equipment pouch. He stepped back several paces, giving himself room, and then brought his hands together in a cross-shaped seal that Naruto had never seen before. Watch carefully, the instructor said. Shadow clone technique. Chakra surged. Naruto felt it more than saw it, a sudden pressure in the air like the moment before a thunderstorm. Blue light flickered around Irika's form, and then with a sound like displaced air, a perfect duplicate appeared beside him. The clone was solid. Real. It turned to look at Naruto with Irika's eyes, raised Irika's hand in a small wave, and then dissolved into smoke as the original released the technique. Irika staggered slightly, catching himself with a hand on his knee. His breathing was labored, his face pale. That's all I can manage," he gasped. "The chakra division is—" But Naruto wasn't listening anymore. He was lost in the sensation that had overtaken him the moment Irika's hands had formed that cross-shaped seal. The pulling behind his eyes was back, stronger than ever before, and this time he didn't fight it. His chakra system, those dense, tangled coils that had always felt more like a burden than a blessing, was moving, restructuring itself in ways he could feel but couldn't see. It was like watching a master craftsman at work, except the craftsman was his own body and the material was pure energy. Pathways that had been dormant flared to life. Blockages he hadn't known existed dissolved. For one crystalline moment, Naruto understood the shadow clone technique not as a sequence of actions but as a concept, a way of being that was as natural as breathing. "Naruto?" Irika's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Naruto, are you alright?" He didn't answer. His hands were already moving, forming the cross seal with a precision that felt almost automatic. The chakra gathered in his core, vast and churning like an ocean contained in human skin. And then he released it. Shadow clone technique. The training ground exploded with displaced air. Irika fell backward, throwing an arm over his face to shield against the sudden gust. The trees at the edge of the field bent under the pressure, leaves tearing free and swirling in a chaotic vortex. When the wind died and the smoke cleared, the instructor lowered his arm and felt his jaw drop. The training ground was no longer empty. There were clones. Hundreds of clones. They covered every inch of available space, standing on the grass, crouched in the trees, balanced on the wooden posts of the training dummies. Each one was identical to Naruto, perfect in every detail, solid and real and very much there. The original Naruto stood at the center of the army, breathing hard but steady, his blue eyes wide with shock and something that might have been joy. He looked around at the sea of orange and blonde that surrounded him. "I did it! I actually did it!" One of the clones, impossible to tell which, let out a whoop of delight. The sound was contagious. Within seconds the entire horde was cheering, hundreds of voices raised in identical celebration. Irika sat in the grass, staring at the spectacle before him with an expression of absolute disbelief. His mind, trained through years of teaching to categorize and assess, struggled to process what he was seeing. Hundreds, Irika thought numbly. The boy had created hundreds of solid clones on his first attempt. Without any practice. Without any training. Just from watching Irika perform it once. The theoretical maximum for a shadow clone technique was supposed to scale with the user's chakra reserves. Irika knew jounin who could manage a dozen. Naruto had just produced more than 300. "How do you feel?" Irika asked, his voice slightly strangled. "Are you experiencing any chakra exhaustion?" Naruto paused, as if conducting an internal inventory. His clones, sensing his focus, fell silent, hundreds of blue eyes turning toward the original. "I feel normal," he said slowly. "A little tired, maybe. But not exhausted. Not even close." A grin split his face, so bright and genuine that it seemed to light up the growing darkness. "I feel like I could make more." Irika let out a breath that was half laugh, half sigh of surrender. "Please don't. I think you've given me enough of a heart attack for one evening." He pushed himself to his feet, brushing grass from his pants, and walked through the crowd of clones to reach the original. Each duplicate he passed gave him a small nod or wave, their movements slightly offset like ripples spreading across water. "Naruto," Irika said, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Do you understand what this means? I can graduate? You can graduate." Irika smiled, and there was no reservation in it now, no lingering doubt or professional distance. "You absolutely can graduate. With a technique like this, there's no examination you can't pass." For a moment, Naruto's expression flickered, hope and disbelief warring across his features. Then the disbelief lost, crumbling beneath the weight of evidence surrounding him in every direction. "Irika-sensei." Naruto's voice had gone quiet. "Thank you?" Irika didn't say anything for a moment. He'd heard students thank him before. This was different, and he wasn't sure he could explain why, and he didn't try. "Don't thank me yet," Irika said gruffly, though his eyes were suspiciously bright. "The graduation exam is in 3 days. We still have a lot of work to do." "What kind of work?" Irika's smile took on an edge that made several of the nearest clones take instinctive steps backward. The academy curriculum might be inadequate for your needs, but that doesn't mean you get to slack off. If you really can copy any technique you observe. He paused, considering. I think it's time we found out exactly what you're capable of. Chapter 2: The Weight of Seeing. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of activity that would later become something of a legend among the academy instructors. Iruka, operating on a combination of professional curiosity and genuine investment in his students' success, threw himself into the project of mapping Naruto's abilities with the intensity of a man possessed. He cleared his schedule of everything but essential duties, moved his planning sessions to Training Ground 3, and began systematically testing the limits of what could only be described as the most unusual Kekkei Genkai Konoha had ever produced. Though, as Iruka noted in his increasingly detailed personal files, Kekkei Genkai wasn't quite the right term. Bloodline limits were typically genetic abilities passed from parent to child, manifesting through specific physiological changes: the Sharingan's distinctive red eyes, the Byakugan's pale irises, the Kagaya clan's bone-manipulating skeletal structure. Naruto showed no such physical markers. His eyes remained ordinary blue, his body unremarkable by shinobi standards. The ability seemed to exist entirely within his chakra network. On the first day, Iruka demonstrated every technique in his repertoire: the body flicker, the water bullet, a basic earth wall, several variations of fire techniques he'd learned during the Third Shinobi World War. Naruto absorbed each one like a sponge absorbing water, watching once, feeling that strange pulling sensation behind his eyes, and then reproducing the technique with perfect accuracy. The earth wall, Iruka observed, circling the defensive structure Naruto had just raised. It's identical to mine. Not just in shape and size, the chakra density is the same. The mineral composition. Even the small crack in the upper left corner that I've never been able to eliminate from my own version. Is that bad? It's not bad or good. It's just unusual. Iruka frowned, running his hand along the earthen surface. Most techniques vary slightly between users. Personal quirks, unconscious habits, differences in chakra nature, they all leave marks. Your copies don't show any of that. They're perfect replicas. Maybe I just haven't used them enough to develop my own quirks. Maybe. But Iruka's tone suggested he didn't quite believe it. The second day brought more complex experiments. Iruka recruited Mizuki, a fellow instructor, to demonstrate techniques Naruto had never seen before. They started with basic ones, a simple gale wind palm, a Miss Servant technique, and gradually escalated in complexity. Mizuki had agreed to help with barely concealed reluctance, his silver hair and dark eyes carrying an edge of hostility that Naruto had learned to recognize in the faces of those who saw the fox before the boy. But professional obligation outweighed personal feelings, and he performed each technique with the mechanical precision of someone fulfilling an unwanted duty. Naruto copied them all. Impossible, Mizuki muttered after Naruto reproduced a B-rank water dragon technique that the instructor had spent 6 months learning. This has to be some kind of trick. It's no trick. Iruka's voice was cool, a subtle warning in its depths. I've been monitoring his chakra signatures. They shift to match whatever technique he's observing, then stabilize into a permanent configuration he can access at will. Then it's dangerous. Mizuki's eyes narrowed, flicking to Naruto with something that went beyond mere discomfort. A power like that in the hands of someone like him? The council needs to be informed. The council will be informed after the graduation exam, through proper channels. Iruka stepped between Mizuki and his student, his posture shifting subtly into something that wasn't quite aggressive but was very far from passive. Until then, this remains an academy training matter. Mizuki held his gaze for a long moment. He looked at Naruto the way people looked at mold on food. Then he turned without another word and strode away, disappearing into the evening shadows. Naruto watched him go, his earlier excitement dimmed by the encounter. He doesn't like me, he said quietly. No, Iruka agreed, seeing no point in lying. He doesn't. Because of... Naruto trailed off, gesturing vaguely at himself, at everything he was and everything the village believed him to be. Because of ignorance and fear. Iruka's hand found Naruto's shoulder again, squeezing gently. Neither of which are your responsibility to fix. You focus on becoming the shinobi you're meant to be. Let small minds remain small. The third day was devoted to stress testing Naruto's chakra reserves, which proved to be an exercise in futility. They started by having him maintain 100 shadow clones while performing basic academy techniques. When that proved insufficient to tire him, they escalated to 200, then 300. At 400 clones, all simultaneously practicing different jutsu under the guidance of Iruka's own clone supervisors, Naruto finally showed signs of mild fatigue. Your chakra pool is, frankly, incomprehensible, Iruka admitted, comparing his notes to the standard academy benchmarks. Even accounting for the documented cases of high chakra individuals, The Uzumaki clan was known for their vitality, you're several orders of magnitude beyond anything in the records. Is that why the fox was sealed in me? I heard some villagers. Naruto asked. It was the first time he'd mentioned it directly, and the words hung in the air between them like a physical weight. Irika hesitated. That's above my clearance level, Naruto. The specifics of your situation are classified. But I can tell you that the sealing required someone with the chakra capacity to contain what was being sealed. Make of that what you will. Naruto nodded slowly, processing. So the old man Hokage chose me because I was already different. Not the other way around. Perhaps. Or perhaps you became different because of what you carry. Or perhaps both are true simultaneously. Irika met his student's eyes steadily. Does the answer change who you want to become? No. There was no hesitation in Naruto's response. I'm going to be Hokage. That hasn't changed. Then focus on that. Irika allowed himself a small smile. The rest is just details. The graduation exam arrived with the inexorability of sunrise. Naruto sat in his usual seat at the back of the classroom, watching his classmates fidget and whisper with varying degrees of anxiety. Across the room, Haruno Sakura was reviewing her notes, with frantic intensity, her pink hair falling across her face like a curtain. Beside her, Yamanaka Ino was making a show of casual confidence that didn't quite reach her eyes. In the front row, Uchiha Sasuke stared straight ahead with the flat, dead expression that had become his default since the incident. Naruto's gaze lingered on his classmate's back, noting the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers occasionally twitched toward weapons that weren't there. They'd never been friends, exactly. But there had been a time, years ago now, before everything went wrong, when Naruto had seen something like recognition in Sasuke's eyes. Two lonely boys isolated from their peers for different reasons, passing each other in the streets without speaking. An acknowledgement that neither of them needed words. That was gone now, replaced by something cold and distant that Naruto didn't fully understand. Quiet down, everyone. Irika's voice cut through the chatter, drawing all eyes to the front of the room. The written portion of the graduation exam will begin in 5 minutes. I expect absolute silence during the test. Anyone caught cheating will be immediately disqualified. Naruto took a deep breath, steadying himself. The written exam had always been his weakest area, not because he lacked intelligence, but because the academy's teaching methods seemed designed for a kind of mind he didn't possess. He learned by doing, by watching, by feeling. Sitting still and absorbing abstract information from textbooks felt like trying to breathe underwater. But he prepared. 3 days of intensive work with Irika had included evening sessions devoted to exam review, and the instructor had discovered that Naruto's copying ability extended in an unexpected direction. When shown how someone else studied, their note-taking patterns, their memorization techniques, their methods of connecting disparate pieces of information, Naruto could replicate that too. It wasn't copying the knowledge itself, but copying the process of acquiring knowledge proved almost as effective. The written exam began. Naruto worked through the questions with methodical focus, drawing on the study patterns he'd absorbed from Irika. History questions about the founding of Konoha. Tactical scenarios asking for optimal squad formations. Identification challenges presenting blurred images of foreign shinobi and demanding clan affiliations. When the final question, an essay prompt on the will of fire, arrived, Naruto paused. This wasn't something that could be answered through memorization or technique. It required something personal, something authentic. What does the will of fire mean to you? He thought about Irika, staying late after hours to help a student everyone else had given up on. He thought about the old man Hokage, visiting him on his birthday every year without fail. He thought about the few merchants who smiled at him genuinely, the children who played with him before their parents called them away. He thought about what it meant to love something, a village, an idea, a people, that didn't always love you back. And he wrote. The practical examination took place in the academy's main training hall, a high-ceilinged room designed to accommodate everything from basic taijutsu demonstrations to more elaborate ninjutsu assessments. Students filed in by alphabetical order, while those who'd already completed their tests waited in the adjacent room to receive their results. By the time Uzumaki Naruto's name was called, the sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon. He entered the hall to find Irika and Mizuki seated behind the examination table, a collection of hatayate, leaf village headbands, arranged between them. The metal plates caught the light streaming through the high windows, glinting like promises. Uzumaki Naruto, Irika announced formally, though his eyes were warm. Please approach the designated area and await instructions. Naruto walked to the center of the room and stood at attention, his posture straighter than it had ever been during regular classes. Something about the formality of the moment demanded it. The practical examination consists of 3 portions, Mizuki said, his voice carefully neutral. Taijutsu proficiency, weapons handling, and ninjutsu demonstration. You will be scored on a scale of 1 to 10 in each category, with a minimum combined score of 15 required for graduation. Understood. The taijutsu test came first, a simple sparring match against a practice dummy that had been chakra-enhanced to respond with basic defensive moves. Naruto moved through the required forms with fluid precision, landing strikes that were technically correct if not particularly inspired. His score, 7 out of 10. Weapons handling involved a standard kunai and shuriken accuracy test, plus a timed retrieval exercise. Here, Naruto excelled. 3 days of practice with his clones had honed his throwing accuracy to near-perfect levels, and the retrieval, navigating an obstacle course while collecting scattered weapons under time pressure, played to his natural speed and agility. Score, 9 out of 10. Then came the ninjutsu demonstration. You will be required to perform one technique from the Academy's standard curriculum. Iruka recited, the words unchanged from every graduation exam before. But then he paused, and something flickered in his expression. Or, at the examiner's discretion, an equivalent technique that demonstrates equal or greater skill. Mizuki's head snapped toward his colleague. That's not. The regulations allow for examiner discretion in special cases. Iruka's tone was mild, but his eyes held an edge of challenge. Shall I quote the relevant passages? Silence stretched between the two instructors. Naruto watched the exchange, understanding that something was being negotiated beyond his full comprehension. Finally, Mizuki leaned back in his chair with a small, sharp smile. Fine. Let the candidate demonstrate, whatever he sees fit. Naruto took a breath. Then another. Then he raised his hands in a cross-shaped seal. Shadow clone technique. The hall filled with smoke and displaced air. When it cleared, 100 identical Narutos stood in perfect formation, their ranks extending from wall to wall like an army awaiting orders. Iruka made a small notation on his clipboard, his expression professionally neutral despite the slight trembling of his hand. Mizuki stared at the assembled clones with an expression that shifted from shock to calculation to something darker and more complicated. His silver hair seemed to pale further, his fingers white-knuckled against the edge of the examination table. Ninjutsu score, Iruka announced into the silence. 10 out of 10. He reached for one of the hitite, the metal warm from the sunlight streaming through the windows. Uzumaki Naruto. Total score, 26 out of 30. You have passed the graduation examination. A smile broke through his formal demeanor. Congratulations. You are now a genin of Konohagakure. Naruto dismissed his clones with a thought, the smoke of their dissolution swirling around him like a cloak. His hand reached out, almost trembling, to accept the headband. The metal was cool against his palm. The cloth was soft, darker blue than he'd expected. The leaf symbol engraved on the plate caught the light, throwing small bright reflections across his face. I did it, he whispered. Then, louder, with a joy that filled the empty spaces of the training hall. I actually did it. He tied the hitite around his forehead with fingers that shook slightly, adjusting it until it sat just above his eyebrows. The weight of it was negligible, a few ounces of metal and cloth, but it felt heavier than anything he'd ever carried. The team assignments will be announced in 1 week, Iruka continued, though his professional tone couldn't quite mask his own satisfaction. Until then, you are free to enjoy your accomplishment. You've earned it. Naruto nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He bowed, deeper than academy protocol required, and turned to leave. Naruto. He paused at the door, looking back. Iruka had risen from his seat, clipboard forgotten on the table. His expression was complicated, pride and worry and something that might have been paternal protectiveness, all tangled together. The path you've chosen won't be easy, the instructor said quietly. There will be people who doubt you. People who fear you. People who will try to use what you can do for their own ends. He paused. But there will also be people who believe in you. Who see you for who you are, not what you carry or what you can do. Find those people. Hold on to them. They'll be worth more than any technique you ever copy. Naruto felt something warm spread through his chest, the same feeling he'd experienced when Iruka had first offered to help him, magnified 100-fold. I will, Iruka-sensei. He grinned, and for the first time, the expression reached his eyes fully. And someday, when I'm Hokage, you can tell everyone you knew me when I was just a loudmouth academy student. I look forward to it. The door closed behind him, and Naruto stepped into the fading sunlight of his first day as a shinobi. As Naruto turned to leave, he caught one last glimpse of Mizuki, still seated at the examination table, staring at the hitite with an expression that promised nothing good. Chapter 3: Shadows in Motion. The week between graduation and team assignments passed in a haze of restless energy. Naruto spent his days exploring Konoha with new eyes, no longer as a civilian child barred from certain districts, but as a full shinobi with access to training grounds and supply depots and 1,000 small privileges that came with wearing a hitite. Shop owners who'd previously ignored him now offered grudging nods of acknowledgement. Civilians who'd crossed the street to avoid him merely stepped aside with wary glances. It wasn't acceptance, but it was progress. He'd also begun to experiment more systematically with his copying ability, testing its limits in ways that Irika's structured sessions hadn't allowed. During daylight hours, he wandered the village, observing shinobi going about their daily routines. Most were careful to avoid performing techniques in public view, but even small things, a jounin using a minor wind release to clear debris from a path, a chunin employing water walking to cross a puddle without breaking stride, were grist for Naruto's mental mill. Each technique he observed was absorbed, catalogued, integrated into his expanding repertoire. By the end of the week, his personal jutsu library had grown from the handful of academy standards to nearly 40 distinct techniques, ranging from basic elemental releases to more esoteric sensory and supplementary skills. The ability, he discovered, had limits, though not the ones he'd expected. He couldn't copy bloodline limits or Kekkei Genkai. An encounter with a Hyuga branch member using the Byakugan to locate a lost cat had produced only the familiar pulling sensation without the subsequent integration. His chakra system had tried to adapt, strained against some fundamental incompatibility, and eventually subsided without result. He couldn't copy techniques that required physical modifications he didn't possess. Observing an Inuzuka clan member's beast mimicry technique had been similarly fruitless. The jutsu relied on canine physiological features that Naruto's human body simply couldn't replicate. And he couldn't copy techniques without observing the complete execution. Partial views, a glimpse of starting seals without the finish, a technique's effect without seeing its creation, left gaps in his understanding that his ability couldn't fill. But everything else? Everything else was fair game. The night before team assignments, Naruto sat on the roof of his apartment building, watching the stars emerge one by one from the darkening sky. The Hokage monument loomed to his left, 4 stone faces gazing eternally over the village they'd led. His eyes traced the 4th face, the only one he allowed himself to study for long, noting the angles of the cheeks, the set of the jaw. Who were you? He wondered, not for the first time. Why did you choose me? The sound of sandals on tile interrupted his reverie. He was moving before conscious thought caught up, rolling to the side and coming up in a crouch with the kunai already in his hand. The motion was pure instinct, drilled into him through countless hours of clone-assisted practice. Easy, Naruto. The voice was familiar, too familiar. It's just me. Mizuki stood at the roof's edge, his silver hair almost luminescent in the moonlight. His hands were raised in a gesture of peace, but something in his posture, a certain coiled readiness, sent warning signals cascading through Naruto's mind. Mizuki-sensei. Naruto didn't lower his kunai. What are you doing here? I came to congratulate you on your graduation. The instructor's smile was wide and warm and didn't reach his eyes at all. And to offer you an opportunity. What kind of opportunity? Mizuki lowered his hands slowly, making a show of relaxation. He sat down on the roof's edge, letting his legs dangle over the street below, and patted the space beside him in invitation. Naruto remained where he was. You performed the shadow clone technique at your examination, Mizuki said, apparently unbothered by the refusal. An impressive feat for a genin. But I couldn't help noticing that you seemed limited. Only 100 clones. For someone with your chakra reserves, that should have been barely a warm-up. I didn't see the point in showing off. No? Mizuki's smile widened. Or did you not want certain people to know the full extent of your abilities? Naruto said nothing. Smart. The instructor nodded approvingly. In the shinobi world, information is power. The less your enemies know about your capabilities, the better your chances of surprising them when it matters. He paused, letting the words sink in. But you know, there's a limit to how much you can learn through observation alone. The really powerful techniques, the village's most closely guarded secrets, those are kept in sealed archives, away from prying eyes. I know. Irika-sensei mentioned the restricted section. Irika. Something flickered across Mizuki's face, contempt, quickly hidden. Irika is a good man, but he's cautious. Bound by rules and procedures. He'd never consider bending regulations, even for a promising student's benefit. And you would? I'm a practical man, Naruto. Mizuki's tone shifted, becoming almost conspiratorial. I see a young shinobi with unprecedented potential, trapped in a system that wasn't designed for him. And I think, why should he be limited by arbitrary restrictions? Why shouldn't he have access to the same resources as the clan heirs who were born with every advantage? Naruto's grip on his kunai tightened imperceptibly. What exactly are you suggesting? Mizuki reached into his vest and withdrew a small scroll, its surface covered in complex seal patterns. This is a key. It opens the doors to the Hokage's private library, the archive where the village's most powerful forbidden techniques are stored. The Scroll of Seals. The name hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. If you were to borrow that scroll for a few hours, Mizuki continued, study its contents, add its techniques to your collection, well, who would ever know? You could return it before dawn, and no one would be the wiser. You want me to steal from the Hokage. I want you to claim what's rightfully yours. Mizuki's eyes glittered in the moonlight. Think about it, Naruto. You have the ability to copy any technique you see. The Scroll of Seals contains dozens, maybe hundreds, of jutsu that have been locked away for generations. Techniques that could make you the most powerful shinobi in the village. Maybe the most powerful shinobi in the world. He held out the key scroll, its surface catching the light like an offering. All you have to do is take it. Naruto stared at the scroll, his mind racing. Everything Mizuki was saying made a certain kind of sense, the seductive logic of shortcuts and easy power. And there was a part of him, a young and angry part that still remembered every cold glance and whispered insult, that wanted to reach out and accept. But another part, the part that remembered Irika staying late to help him, the part that saw the old man Hokage's genuine smile when they ate ramen together, hesitated. Why? Naruto asked quietly. I told you. I believe in your potential. No. Naruto's voice was harder now, his eyes fixed on Mizuki's face with an intensity that made the older man's mask slip slightly. Why would you take this risk? If I get caught, you're implicated. If I succeed, you get nothing. There's no benefit to you here. So why? Mizuki kept smiling. The smile didn't change. That was the problem with it. You're smarter than people give you credit for, he said finally. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. That thing inside you, it wasn't sealed in an idiot. Naruto went very still. Oh, didn't you think I knew? Mizuki laughed, a harsh sound without humor. Everyone knows, Naruto. The whole village knows. Why do you think they look at you the way they do? Why do you think they've hated you since the day you were born? The fox. The word came out as barely a whisper. The nine-tailed fox. The most powerful of the tailed beasts. The demon that killed hundreds of shinobi and nearly destroyed Konoha 12 years ago. Mizuki's eyes were bright with something between triumph and malice. And it's sealed inside you. You are the Nine-Tails, Naruto. That's why you have such enormous chakra reserves. That's why you can copy any technique. You're not human at all, you're just a container for a monster. The words hit like physical blows. Naruto felt something inside him crack, not break, not quite, but fracture along lines that had been forming for years. That's not true, he said, but his voice shook. Isn't it? Ask yourself, why would the fourth Hokage seal a demon in a random orphan? Why would anyone care about protecting some nobody's child? Mizuki leaned forward, his words a venomous whisper. Because you're not a child at all. You're a weapon. A tool. That's all you've ever been. Naruto's kunai trembled in his hand. But it doesn't have to stay that way. Mizuki's tone shifted again, becoming almost gentle. The Scroll of Seals contains techniques that can break any ceiling. If you obtain it, if you bring it to me, I can help you. I can show you how to remove the demon, how to become truly human. Wouldn't you like that, Naruto? To finally be free? The offer hung in the air, poisonous and sweet. And for one terrible moment, Naruto considered it. Then he remembered Irika's words, there will be people who will try to use what you can do for their own ends. He lowered his kunai and stood up straight, meeting Mizuki's gaze directly. You're lying. Mizuki blinked. What? You're lying. Naruto repeated. About the scroll, about helping me, about all of it. You don't want to free me, you want to use me. To steal something valuable and blame it on the demon boy. Naruto. I've seen the way you look at me. Naruto's voice was steady now, the cracks in his armor sealing over with something hard and bright. The way you've always looked at me. Like I'm nothing. Like I'm less than nothing. You don't want to help me. You want me to fail. You want me to prove everyone right about what I am. Mizuki's mask shattered completely, revealing the ugly hatred beneath. You arrogant little monster. Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed, waiting years for an opportunity like this? The power in that scroll, it should be mine. He moved, faster than a mere instructor should have been able to, drawing a weapon, a large shuriken spinning toward Naruto's unguarded chest. But Naruto was already gone. Body flicker, the technique he'd copied from Irika just 5 days ago. He reappeared on the opposite edge of the roof, his own kunai raised in a defensive position. Help! Naruto shouted into the night air. Attack on a leaf genin. Mizuki is a traitor. Shut up. Mizuki's second shuriken was already flying, larger than the first, humming with chakra. You think anyone's coming to help you? You think anyone cares about some demon brat? Naruto dodged again, the weapon embedding itself in the chimney where his head had been. But Mizuki was closing the distance now, a kunai in each hand, his movements revealing training far beyond what an academy instructor should possess. I've been planning this for months. Mizuki snarled, slashing at Naruto's throat. All I needed was a patsy, someone the village would believe had finally revealed their true demonic nature. And then you showed up with your miraculous new abilities, and I thought, perfect. Who would question it when the monster child stole the village's most precious secrets? Naruto blocked, parried, ducked, his body moving through techniques he'd absorbed over the past week. A water bullet forced Mizuki back. A gust palm disrupted his footing. But the instructor was more experienced, more ruthless, and Naruto was fighting for the first time against an opponent who genuinely wanted to kill him. I'm going to enjoy this. Mizuki breathed, closing in for another strike. Killing you, taking the scroll myself, leaving your body for Irika to find in the morning. Can you imagine his face? His precious student, revealed as the traitor everyone always knew he'd become. The kunai descended. And stopped, caught in a grip of steel. That's quite enough, Mizuki. The third Hokage stood between them, his aged face set in lines of cold fury. Behind him, 4 ANBU operatives materialized from shadow, their animal masks betraying nothing of their emotions. Mizuki's eyes went wide with terror. Lord Hokage, this isn't, the demon attacked me. I heard everything. The Hokage's voice was quiet, which somehow made it more terrifying than a shout. From the moment you offered this young shinobi a key to commit treason against Konoha, I was testing him. Testing his loyalty. I suspected he might be compromised. Silence. The single word carried the weight of decades of command. Mizuki of the Academy, you are hereby charged with attempted murder, conspiracy to commit treason, and violation of the third Hokage's decree regarding the disclosure of S-rank secrets. Mizuki's face went pale. The decree? But I didn't. You told Uzumaki Naruto the nature of his burden. The Hokage's eyes were like stones. You violated the law that has protected this village for 12 years, out of nothing more than petty spite. The ANBU moved forward, seizing Mizuki's arms with mechanical precision. The former instructor struggled briefly, then went limp, his expression shifting to something desperate. Wait. Lord Hokage, please, I have information. Valuable information. About the organization that approached me, the one that put me up to this. You'll have plenty of time to share that information with the Biki Marino. The Hokage nodded to the ANBU. Take him. They vanished in a swirl of leaves, taking Mizuki with them. The night fell silent once more, broken only by the distant sounds of the village settling into sleep. The Hokage turned to Naruto, and his expression softened, the cold fury melting into something warmer, sadder. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have been watching him more closely. I should have prevented this. Naruto shook his head slowly. You heard everything? I maintained certain monitoring seals around the village. When Mizuki activated the key scroll near your residence, I was alerted. The Hokage moved to sit on the roof's edge, his robe settling around him like a pool of fabric. May I? Naruto nodded, and the old man patted the space beside him, the same gesture Mizuki had used, but somehow entirely different. They sat together in silence for a long moment, watching the stars wheel overhead. He told you about the Nine Tails, the Hokage said finally. He told me I am the Nine Tails. Naruto's voice was flat, carefully controlled. Is that true? No. The answer came immediately, without hesitation. Absolutely not. You are Uzumaki Naruto, a human being who contains the Nine Tails, just as a cup contains water. The cup is not the water. You are not the fox. Then why does everyone? Because people are afraid. The Hokage sighed, the weight of years evident in the sound. 12 years ago, the Nine Tails killed many people. Parents, children, friends, students. That kind of trauma doesn't heal easily, and for some, it never heals at all. They see you and remember their pain, and their fear turns to hatred. That's not fair. No. It isn't. The Hokage turned to look at Naruto directly. Life rarely is. But fairness isn't something that's given, it's something that's created, one choice at a time. You proved that tonight, Naruto. What do you mean? Mizuki offered you power. He offered you revenge against a village that has mistreated you. He gave you every reason to betray Konoha. The old man's eyes were warm with something that might have been pride. And you refused. You saw through his deception and stood firm. That is not the action of a demon. That is the action of a true shinobi. Naruto felt something loosen in his chest, a knot he hadn't known was there. Old man, he said slowly. Can I ask you something? Anything. Irika-sensei found out about my ability. The copying thing. He said it might be some kind of bloodline limit, but he didn't know for sure. Naruto hesitated. Do you know? Is it because of the fox? The Hokage was quiet for a long moment, considering his words carefully. The Nine Tails grants you enormous chakra reserves, he said finally. But your copying ability? That is yours alone, Naruto. It exists in your chakra network, independent of the seal. So I was born with it. Perhaps. Or perhaps it developed in response to your unique circumstances. Chakra networks are not static, they grow and change throughout a shinobi's life, responding to stress and training and 1,000 other factors. The Hokage smiled slightly. You are not powerful because of the demon. You are powerful because of who you are. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. Naruto nodded slowly, absorbing this. There is one more thing. The Hokage continued. Your ability, while remarkable, will inevitably attract attention. Some of that attention will be benign, curiosity, admiration, envy. But some of it will be dangerous. There are forces in this world that would seek to control or exploit such power. Like Mizuki. And others far more dangerous. The old man's expression grew serious. I cannot protect you from everything, Naruto. But I can give you one piece of advice. Be careful what you reveal and to whom. Your copying ability is not a secret weapon, it's a target. The more people know about it, the more people will try to use it against you. I understand, old man. Naruto allowed himself a small grin. I'll be careful. But I'm not going to hide forever. Someday, when I'm Hokage, everyone will know what I can do. And they'll acknowledge me not despite it, but because of it. The third Hokage looked at the boy beside him, this impossible, stubborn, brilliant child who carried the weight of a demon and still dreamed of protecting a village that scorned him. I believe you will, he said quietly. I truly believe you will. Chapter 4: The Forming of Bonds. The academy classroom felt different the following Monday. Perhaps it was the morning light, slanting through windows that had never seemed quite so clean. Perhaps it was the knowledge that the students gathered within had crossed the threshold, no longer children playing at shinobi, but soldiers, however young, of a hidden village. Perhaps it was simply the weight of the Hittite pressed against Naruto's forehead, a constant reminder of what he'd earned and nearly lost in the span of a single week. Or perhaps it was the way conversation stopped when he entered the room. Naruto had grown accustomed to whispers, to the subtle shifting of bodies away from his presence. But this was different. This was the silence of assessment, of reevaluation, 24 pairs of eyes studying him with expressions that ranged from curiosity to wariness to something approaching respect. Rumors had spread. They always did in Konoha. Mizuki's arrest had been officially attributed to conduct unbecoming a shinobi of the leaf. But the truth, or at least a version of it, had leaked through the village's extensive gossip network. People knew that the academy instructor had attacked a newly graduated genin. People knew that the genin in question had defended himself until the Hokage personally intervened. What people didn't know was the rest of it. The third had been explicit in his orders. The nature of Naruto's ability was to remain classified at least until further assessment could be conducted. Naruto found his way to an empty seat near the back of the classroom and settled in, ignoring the stares. His eyes found Irika at the front of the room, and some tension he hadn't known he was carrying eased at the sight of his sensei, whole, present, and preparing notes, as if it were any other day. Their eyes met briefly. Irika gave him a small nod, nothing more, but it was enough. Settle down, everyone. The instructor's voice cut through the murmur of speculation. I know you're all eager to learn your team assignments, so I won't waste time with speeches. When I call your name and team number, please proceed to the designated meeting room to await your Jounin instructor. He lifted his clipboard, and the room held its collective breath. Team 1, Yoshida Akira, Tanaka Mei, Fujimoto Ryu. Meeting Room A, Team 2. The names flowed in a steady stream, punctuated by the scrape of chairs and the shuffle of feet as students rose to meet their new destinies. Naruto tracked the announcements with half his attention, the other half occupied with studying his classmates, soon to be fellow shinobi, potential allies or rivals. Team 7, Haruno Sakura, Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto blinked. Sasuke's head turned slightly, not enough to look back at him, but enough to acknowledge the announcement. Across the room, Sakura let out a small sound that was either delight or dismay, her green eyes flicking between her two new teammates. Your Jounin instructor will be Hatake Kakashi. Meeting Room 3. Hatake Kakashi. The name tugged at something in Naruto's memory, a conversation overheard, a reference in a history lesson. The copy ninja. The man of 1,000 jutsu. The irony was not lost on him. Meeting Room 3 was a small, windowless space with a single table, 3 chairs, and a clock that seemed designed to emphasize the passage of time through increasingly loud ticking. Naruto took the chair closest to the door, habit, ingrained through years of watching escape routes in case situations turned hostile. Sakura claimed the seat farthest from him, her body language a study in conflicting impulses. Sasuke, unsurprisingly, chose to stand against the wall with his arms crossed, radiating disinterest like heat from a forge. So, Sakura said after several minutes of uncomfortable silence. We're a team now. Apparently. Sasuke's tone suggested this was only marginally more interesting than watching paint dry. I'm sure it'll work out. Sakura's voice had that particular quality of cheerfulness that came from forcing optimism through clenched teeth. I mean, we're all competent shinobi. And Kakashi-sensei is supposed to be one of the best, so... He's late. This came from Naruto, who was watching the clock with narrowed eyes. They'd been waiting for nearly an hour. Maybe something came up? Sakura offered. Jounin probably have important duties we don't know about. Maybe. But Naruto's tone suggested he didn't believe it. Another hour passed. Sakura's forced cheerfulness had curdled into restless irritation. Even Sasuke's legendary composure showed cracks, his fingers tapping against his arm in an irregular rhythm. Naruto stood, walked to the chalkboard at the front of the room, and grabbed an eraser. What are you doing? Sakura demanded. Testing a theory. He wedged the eraser into the top of the sliding door, balanced carefully so that it would fall when the door was opened. A childish prank, the kind of thing academy students did to each other during lunch break. Our new sensei is a jounin, Sasuke said flatly. He's not going to fall for something that basic. Probably not. Naruto returned to his seat. But the way someone reacts to something basic tells you a lot about them. Sasuke's eyes narrowed slightly, reassessing, perhaps, his initial assumptions about his loud, orange-clad teammate. 30 more minutes crawled by. Then the door slid open. The eraser fell, bounced off a shock of silver hair, and tumbled to the floor in a small cloud of chalk dust. Hatake Kakashi stood in the doorway, one visible eye curved in an expression that might have been amusement. His lower face was covered by the standard-issue mask most shinobi wore in the field, and his hatayate was tilted to cover his left eye. His posture was slouched, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He looked down at the eraser, then up at the three genin. My first impression of you all is that you're a bunch of idiots. Sakura flushed crimson. In our defense, you're almost 3 hours late. I got lost on the road of life. The visible eye crinkled. Meet me on the roof in 5 minutes. He vanished in a swirl of leaves before anyone could respond. The academy roof offered a panoramic view of Konoha, the village spread out below like a map rendered in tile and timber. The Hokage monument presided over the scene, 4 stone faces watching with expressions of eternal vigilance. Kakashi was already there when they arrived, seated on the railing with his back to the drop, reading a small orange book with an intensity that suggested the contents were either profound or deeply inappropriate. Sit, he said without looking up. They sat, on the bench provided, a safe distance from their enigmatic instructor. Right. Kakashi closed his book and tucked it away, finally giving them his full attention. Let's start with introductions. Tell me your names, your likes, dislikes, hobbies, and dreams for the future. Shouldn't you go first, sensei? Sakura asked. To show us how it's done. If you insist. Kakashi shrugged. My name is Hatake Kakashi. I have no desire to tell you my likes and dislikes. My dream for the future, haven't really thought about it. As for hobbies, I have lots. The three genin exchanged glances. That told us nothing. Sakura muttered. Moving on. You first, Pinky. Sakura's eye twitched at the nickname, but she rallied quickly. My name is Haruno Sakura. I like well. Her eyes slid towards Sasuke, and her cheeks flushed. I dislike Ino-Pig and people who are rude for no reason. My hobby is memorizing things. And my dream. Another glance at Sasuke. My dream is... Next. Kakashi's tone was carefully neutral. Brooding in the corner. Sasuke pushed off from the wall he'd been leaning against, his expression unchanging. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I don't particularly like anything. I dislike many things. I don't have a dream, because I'm going to make it a reality. I will restore my clan and destroy a certain someone. The temperature on the roof seemed to drop several degrees. Cheerful, Kakashi observed. And finally, the blonde one. Naruto considered his words carefully, Irika's advice and the Hokage's warning both fresh in his mind. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I like ramen, training, and people who treat me fairly. I dislike the 3 minutes it takes for ramen to cook and people who judge others without understanding them. He paused. My hobby is developing new techniques. And my dream is to become Hokage, the greatest Hokage, so that everyone in the village will finally acknowledge me. Kakashi studied him for a long moment, his single visible eye unreadable. Interesting, he said finally. You're all very different. Which brings me to the real purpose of today's meeting. He stood, pocketing his hands again. Tomorrow morning, you will meet me at Training Ground 7 at 5 a.m. for a survival exercise. Another exercise? Sakura frowned. But we already graduated. We did all the training. This is different. Something in Kakashi's voice made them all go still. Of the 27 graduates from your class, only 9 will actually become genin. The rest will be sent back to the academy for another year of training. What? Sakura shot to her feet. But that's not fair. We passed the exam. Life isn't fair. Kakashi's eye curved in that false friendly smile. The graduation exam tests whether you have the basic skills to potentially become shinobi. My exercise will determine whether you're actually worth the village's investment. What kind of exercise? Sasuke asked, the first sign of genuine engagement he'd shown. You'll find out tomorrow. But I should warn you, this particular test has a failure rate of 66%. I've never passed a single team that attempted it. He let that sink in, watching their reactions with apparent interest. Sakura looked horrified. Sasuke's jaw tightened. Naruto smiled. 66%, huh? The blonde genin leaned back on the bench, his posture deceptively casual. Sounds like a challenge. Kakashi's eye met his, and for a moment, something passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of one unusual individual acknowledging another. One more thing, the jounin added as he turned to leave. I recommend not eating breakfast tomorrow. You'll just throw it up. He disappeared, leaving 3 genin alone with their thoughts and the lengthening shadows of approaching evening. Chapter 5: Bells and Battles. Training Ground 7 was quiet in the pre-dawn darkness, the only sound the gentle burble of the stream that cut through its center and the distant calls of early rising birds. Naruto arrived first, an hour before the designated meeting time. He used the solitude to explore the terrain, identifying cover positions, mapping sight lines, testing the stability of the wooden posts that stood in a loose triangle at the field's center. Information was ammunition, the academy had taught him, and he intended to be well armed. Sasuke appeared at precisely 4:55 a.m., his approach soundless enough that Naruto only noticed him when the Uchiha stopped 5 meters away. They regarded each other in the gray half-light, either speaking. You're early, Sasuke said finally. So are you. Silence stretched between them, filled with the unspoken history of their parallel loneliness. The test, Sasuke continued. You have a theory about what it might involve? Naruto considered the question. Kakashi said it was a survival exercise. But that doesn't make sense. Why would a jounin waste time testing basic survival skills? We learned those in our second year. Agreed. The phrasing was deliberate misdirection. So either the test is about something else entirely, or the survival aspect is metaphorical. Naruto shrugged. Either way, I figure the best strategy is to be prepared for anything. Sasuke's dark eyes studied him with renewed interest. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? The dead last. The loud failure who never took anything seriously. I'm still loud. Naruto grinned. But maybe I've learned to be quiet when it matters. Before Sasuke could respond, Sakura arrived, breathless, dark circles under her eyes suggesting a sleepless night. She took in the scene before her with visible confusion. You're both already here? What time did you arrive? Early, they said simultaneously. Sakura's mouth opened, then closed. She joined them in their vigil, and the 3 genin settled in to wait. They waited for 3 hours. The sun rose. Birds sang their full repertoire and fell silent. The stream continued its endless conversation with its banks. And still no sign of their supposedly elite instructor. When Kakashi finally materialized, appearing from behind a tree with his nose buried in that orange book, the sun was well above the horizon and Sakura's temper had reached its breaking point. You're late! She shrieked. Again! You told us to be here at 5. Did I? Kakashi tucked his book away, seemingly unconcerned. I could have sworn I said 6. Or maybe 7. Time is so hard to keep track of. You said? Anyway. He pulled something from his pouch, 2 small bells, their bright metal gleaming in the morning light. Let's begin. The test is simple. Take these bells from me before noon. If you succeed, you pass. If you fail, you go back to the academy. He attached the bells to his belt loop, where they chimed softly with every movement. There are only 2 bells, Naruto observed. Excellent observation. That means one of you will definitely fail, at minimum. Kakashi's eye crinkled. And just to make things interesting, anyone who fails will be tied to those posts and forced to watch while the others eat lunch in front of them. Sakura's stomach growled audibly, drawing a flush of embarrassment to her cheeks. You should come at me with the intent to kill, Kakashi continued. Kunai, shuriken, jutsu, use whatever you have. Otherwise, you have no chance of getting these bells. But you could get seriously hurt, Sakura protested. That's kind of you to worry. The Jounin's tone was dry. I think I'll manage. He pulled out his book, opened it to a marked page, and began to read. When I say start, you have until noon. He didn't look up. Begin. Sasuke and Sakura vanished into the surrounding forest, seeking concealment for their assault. Standard Academy tactics: observe the target, identify weaknesses, strike from ambush. Naruto didn't move. Kakashi's visible eye flicked up from his book. You're not hiding? Would it matter? Naruto tilted his head. You're a Jounin. A former ANBU captain, from what I've heard. You probably knew where we were from the moment we arrived, and you'll know where Sasuke and Sakura hide no matter how careful they are. Something shifted in Kakashi's posture, a subtle tension, there and gone. Interesting reasoning. But hiding still offers strategic advantages. The element of surprise, time to observe and plan. I've had an hour to observe and plan. Naruto smiled. I'll take my chances with direct action. His hands came together in the cross seal. Shadow clone technique. The training ground erupted with orange. 50 Narutos appeared in a spreading wave, each one moving to encircle the Jounin with kunai drawn and ready. Kakashi closed his book, tucking it away for the first time since the test began. Now this is unexpected. The shadow clone technique, from an academy graduate? I'm full of surprises. The original Naruto's voice came from somewhere in the crowd, impossible to identify without close inspection. Are you going to fight, or just stand there looking impressed? I suppose I'm a little curious to see what you've got. The clones attacked. They came from every direction at once, a coordinated assault that would have overwhelmed most Chunin. Kakashi moved through them like water through sand, a dodge here, a redirection there, bodies poofing into smoke with casual precision. But Naruto wasn't trying to hit him. With each clone Kakashi destroyed, its memories returned to the original, a property of the shadow clone that Iruka had mentioned during their training sessions. Information about the Jounin's fighting style, his reaction times, his preferred counters. Data points accumulating into a tactical picture. He favors his right side. His blocks leave his lower left exposed for 0.3 seconds. He conserves movement, efficient, but predictable once you know the pattern. More clones appear to replace the fallen, maintaining pressure while the original processed each new insight. In the trees, Sasuke watched with wide eyes. He'd known Naruto could make clones, the rumors had reached him before team assignments, but this was something else entirely. This was warfare on a scale that shouldn't have been possible for a fresh genin. What the hell happened to the dead last? The battle continued. Kakashi's movements grew slightly more serious as the clones began adapting to his patterns, their attacks becoming harder to deflect. Still nothing that seriously threatened him, but the improvement was notable. Not bad, the Jounin admitted, dispatching another wave with a sweeping kick. You learn fast. You have no idea. Naruto's voice came from multiple directions now, the clones having learned to speak in unison. But I think it's time to escalate. The remaining clones, still more than 30, formed simultaneous hand seals. Not all the same seal, Kakashi noted with growing interest. Different clones were preparing different techniques. Fire style, grand fireball. Water style, water bullet. Wind style, great breakthrough. The elemental techniques launched simultaneously, converging on Kakashi's position from 3 different angles. Not perfectly executed. The fire was too large, the water slightly off target, the wind unfocused, but the combination was sound. The fire fed on the wind, growing into an inferno. The water created steam that obscured vision. The attack was genuinely dangerous. Kakashi substituted with a log and appeared behind the line of elemental attackers, his single eye no longer quite so lazy. Multiple nature transformations, he said quietly. From clones. At your age. I told you I'm full of surprises. Naruto was breathing harder now, the technique drain was starting to show. But we both know this isn't enough to get those bells. Kakashi said nothing. He put his book away. He vanished, body flicker, but faster than Naruto could track, and reappeared directly in front of the original, one hand raised in a seal. 1,000 years of death. The technique, if it could be called that, sent Naruto flying across the training ground, landing in the stream with a spectacular splash. The remaining clones poofed out of existence as their creator's concentration shattered. Kakashi pulled out his book and resumed reading. You might want to tag out. Let your teammates have a turn. From his position in the stream, sputtering water and nursing his wounded dignity, Naruto glared at the Jounin with renewed determination. Direct assault wasn't enough. Naruto pushed himself upright, already turning the problem over. He needed a new approach. The next hour saw a series of escalating encounters. Sasuke launched his own assault, fire techniques that demonstrated why the Uchiha were called the Clan of the Flame. His taijutsu was excellent, his strategy sound, and he even managed to touch the bells once, his fingers brushing the metal before Kakashi twisted away. But he failed to take them. Sakura attempted to use genjutsu. Her academy scores had been highest in that area, but Kakashi dispelled it almost negligently, leaving her trapped in a countering illusion that had her frozen in place for several minutes. Throughout it all, Naruto watched and learned. He saw the way Kakashi adjusted his stance when facing fire techniques, creating openings in other areas. He noted the subtle chakra fluctuation that preceded a substitution technique. He absorbed the Jounin's combat vocabulary, translating it into knowledge his body could use. And he noticed something else. Kakashi was testing them individually. Even when one genin was attacking, the other two had opportunities to strike, opportunities that were allowed to pass and used. The realization hit him clean and cold. They were supposed to work together. The realization crystallized in Naruto's mind with sudden clarity. A survival exercise. 3 genin against 1 jounin. 2 bells for 3 students. It's not about taking the bells. It's about choosing to work together even when it means someone has to lose. He caught Sasuke's eye across the clearing, gesturing toward the stream where Sakura was recovering from her genjutsu encounter. The Uchiha's brow furrowed, then smoothed as he came to the same conclusion. They reconvened in the forest, out of Kakashi's immediate line of sight. "He's toying with us," Sasuke said flatly. "He's been holding back this entire time." "I know." Naruto nodded. "But I think that's the point. The test isn't about beating him, we can't beat him. It's about showing we can work as a team." "How do you figure that?" Sakura asked, still slightly disoriented. 2 bells. 3 students. He's trying to make us compete against each other. Naruto shook his head. "But look at it from the village's perspective. What good is a team where the members would sacrifice each other for personal advancement? A team like that would fall apart the moment things got serious." Sasuke was silent for a long moment. "You're saying the test is designed so we can only pass by working together? And that one of us has to be willing to fail for the others?" Naruto met Sasuke's eyes steadily. "Teamwork means putting the mission above yourself. Even when it costs you." "That's actually really smart," Sakura admitted. "But if that's the case, why the bells? Why make it seem like a competition?" "Because Kakashi-sensei wants to see if we'll figure it out." Naruto grinned. "And I think it's time we showed him we have." Kakashi was still reading when the 3 genin emerged from the forest, walking side by side in a loose formation. "Giving up?" he asked without looking up. "There's still 20 minutes left." "We're not giving up," Naruto said. "We're changing tactics." The jounin lowered his book slightly, his eyes showing mild interest. "We want to try again," Sasuke continued. "Together this time." "Oh?" Kakashi tucked his book away. "What makes you think that will work any better?" "It probably won't." Sakura stepped forward, her voice steadier than it had been all day. "You're way stronger than us. You could beat us with one hand tied behind your back. Probably both hands, to be honest. But that's not the point, is it?" Naruto crossed his arms. "You don't care if we get the bells. You care if we understand why we couldn't." Silence hung in the air. Then Kakashi smiled, a real smile, visible even through his mask in the way his eye curved and his posture shifted. "Go on. The bells are a trick," Naruto explained. 2 bells, 3 students. It's designed to make us fight each other. But a team that fights each other isn't a team at all. It's just 3 individuals who happen to be in the same place. And in the shinobi world, individuals die," Sasuke added. "Teams survive. So we decided," Sakura finished, "that if one of us has to fail, we'll fail together. We attack you as a team, and whatever happens, we accept it together." Kakashi regarded them for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he laughed. It was a strange sound, rusty, as if from disuse, but genuinely amused. "In the shinobi world, those who break the rules are trash," he said, his tone shifting to something more serious. "But those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash." He reached down and unclipped the bells from his belt. "You 3 are the first team I've tested to understand that." He tossed the bells to Naruto, who caught them reflexively. "You pass." Sakura let out a shriek of joy. Even Sasuke's perpetual scowl softened into something approaching satisfaction. "Wait," Naruto said, looking at the bells in his hand. "But there's only 2. You said." "I said a lot of things." Kakashi's eye crinkled. "Most of them were lies. The truth is, no genin has ever beaten me by taking the bells. They're not meant to be taken. They're meant to force you to make a choice. And if we'd chosen wrong? Then you would have gone back to the academy, and I would have found another team to test. The Jounin shrugged. But you didn't choose wrong. You figured it out. That's what matters. He turned, walking toward the memorial stone that stood at the edge of the training ground, a dark monolith covered in names. Come here. All of you. They followed, curiosity overcoming their relief. Kakashi stopped before the stone, his posture shifting to something more solemn. This stone contains the names of every Konoha shinobi who died in service to the village. Heroes, all of them. His voice was quiet now, stripped of its earlier levity. Many of them were my friends. Some were my teachers. One was my teammate. Naruto looked at the names, too numerous to count, and felt the weight of history pressing down on him. I became a jounin at a young age, Kakashi continued. I was arrogant back then. Focused on the mission above all else, including my comrades. I believed that following the rules was more important than anything. He touched one name on the stone, his fingers tracing the carved characters. Uchiha Obito. Sasuke went rigid beside Naruto. He was an Uchiha, like you, Sasuke. A few years older than your brother. Kakashi didn't turn around. He was loud, late to everything, always making excuses. By conventional standards, he was the weakest member of our team. What happened to him? Sakura asked softly. He died saving my life. Kakashi's hand dropped from the stone. Because I was too focused on the mission to see what really mattered. He sacrificed himself so that I could learn what he already understood, that those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash. He turned to face them, and for a moment, Naruto could see past the mask, not the physical one, but the emotional armor the jounin wrapped himself in. There was pain there, old and deep, but also something else. Hope, perhaps. Or at least its possibility. From tomorrow, Team 7 begins its official duties. We'll take missions, train, face challenges that will test everything you have. His eye moved across each of them in turn. But remember what you learned today. Remember that you are not 3 individuals, you are a team. Stand together, and you might survive what's coming. Stand alone, and you will fall. What's coming? Naruto asked. Kakashi's expression shuddered, the brief glimpse of vulnerability disappearing behind professional distance. The shinobi world is changing, he said. Faster than anyone wants to admit. Old alliances are fracturing. Old enemies are moving. And somewhere out there, forces are gathering that will make today's test look like a pleasant afternoon stroll. He walked past them, heading toward the forest path that led back to the village. Get some rest. Tomorrow, your real education begins. Chapter 6: A Country in Peril. The first month of Team 7's existence passed in a blur of D-rank missions that tested Naruto's patience more than his skills. Catching escaped cats. Weeding gardens. Painting fences. Babysitting the children of merchants while their parents attended to business. The tasks were mundane, borderline insulting, more suited to civilian laborers than trained shinobi. But Naruto understood their purpose. It's about learning to work together on low-stakes assignments, he explained to Sakura one afternoon, after their team had spent 3 hours chasing a particularly elusive feline through the market district. So that when the stakes get higher, we already know how to coordinate. Sakura, nursing scratches on both arms from the cat's desperate resistance, gave him a skeptical look. You've really thought about this. I think about everything. Naruto grinned. It's a hobby. Their teamwork did improve, though the process was neither smooth nor painless. Sasuke's pride made him reluctant to accept assistance, while Sakura's tendency to defer to the Uchiha led to coordination failures when he wasn't available to lead. Naruto's unconventional problem-solving methods, which often involved more shadow clones than strictly necessary, created chaos as often as solutions. But slowly, incrementally, they began to function as a unit. Kakashi observed it all with his characteristic air of lazy disinterest, offering corrections so subtle they seemed like idle comments, structuring exercises to address weaknesses none of them had realized they possessed. The man was infuriating, perpetually late, apparently addicted to his inappropriate literature, but there was no denying his effectiveness as a teacher. It was during their second month that things changed. The mission briefing room in the Hokage's tower was crowded that morning, various teams and their instructors waiting to receive their daily assignments. The third Hokage sat behind his desk, flanked by mission clerks and a rotating guard of chunin. Team 7, you have completed 43 D-rank missions with a 100% success rate. The old man's eyes twinkled with something that might have been amusement. I believe you've earned an upgrade. Sakura perked up. A C rank? Really? Indeed. The Hokage shuffled through the mission scrolls before him. An escort mission to the Land of Waves. You'll be protecting a bridge builder during his journey home and providing security until his project is completed. What kind of security? Kakashi asked, his tone carefully neutral. Minor bandits, according to the client assessment. Nothing beyond the scope of a C rank. The Hokage's gaze lingered on the jounin for a moment. The client is waiting outside. I'll allow you to conduct your own interview. The old man nodded to one of the chunin, who opened the side door. The man who entered was not what Naruto had expected. Tazuna was old, at least 50, maybe older, with gray hair and a weathered face that spoke of years spent working outdoors. He carried a sake bottle in one hand and wore the rough clothes of a tradesman. His eyes, though bloodshot, held a sharpness that belied his disheveled appearance. They also held fear. Naruto noticed it immediately, the way the man's gaze darted to the exits, the slight tremor in his hands, the tension in his shoulders. This was someone operating under pressure that went far beyond worry about. Minor bandits. So these are my bodyguards? Tazuna's voice was gruff, deliberately dismissive. A bunch of kids and their lazy-looking teacher? I'm paying for protection, not a daycare outing. Looks can be deceiving. Kakashi replied mildly. My team is more than capable of handling your stated security concerns. Something flickered in Tazuna's expression at the word. Stated. Yeah, well, I hope you're right. He took a long swig from his bottle. When do we leave? Tomorrow at dawn. Meet us at the village gates. Kakashi's eye curved in his signature smile. Try not to be too drunk to walk. Tazuna grunted and shuffled out of the briefing room, leaving a faint smell of alcohol in his wake. Sensei. Naruto kept his voice low as they exited the tower. That man is lying about something. Kakashi didn't break stride. What makes you say that? His body language? He's scared, really scared. But not the way someone would be if they were just worried about bandits. That kind of fear only comes from a specific, known threat. I noticed. The jounin's tone was thoughtful. But it's not our place to interrogate clients about their potential deceptions. The mission parameters are what the Hokage gave us. If circumstances change, we adapt. And if the circumstances are dangerous enough to warrant a higher-ranked mission? Kakashi stopped walking, turning to face his genin with an expression that was suddenly serious. Then I protect my team first and complete the mission second. Always. He held Naruto's gaze. But I don't abandon those in need because the path got harder than expected. That's not who I am. After a moment, Naruto nodded. Good. That's not who I want to be either. The journey to the land of waves began uneventfully. They traveled the main road out of Konoha, passing through Fire Country's cultivated heartland. Rice paddies stretched to the horizon, interrupted by occasional villages and the distant blue of forested mountains. The weather was pleasant, the traffic light. But something in Kakashi's posture shifted, a subtle tightening, his hand drifting closer to his equipment pouch. The road to waves should have been busier. Merchants traveling to take advantage of the country's famous fishing industry, tourists visiting the scenic coastline, traders moving goods between the island nation and its mainland partners. Instead, they'd seen perhaps a dozen travelers all morning, and most of those had been heading the opposite direction. He said nothing, but his hand moved again a little closer to his equipment pouch. The attack came shortly after noon. Two figures erupted from a puddle in the middle of the road, a puddle that shouldn't have existed, given the week of clear weather they'd experienced. They moved with the fluid precision of trained assassins, chains extending from gauntlets on their arms to wrap around Kakashi before anyone could react. One down. The first attacker snarled. Leaf jounin are weak. The second agreed. They pulled in opposite directions. Kakashi exploded into chunks of wood. Substitution, Naruto realized, even as his body was already moving. He'd seen the technique 100 times, but never this fast. The jounin had replaced himself before the chains even made contact. Protect the client! Sakura shouted, pulling Tazuna behind her. Sasuke was already engaging, his kunai meeting the chain wielder's clawed gauntlet in a shower of sparks. His fire techniques weren't practical at this range, too much risk of hitting his teammates, but his taijutsu forced the attacker backward. Naruto created 10 clones, sending them to flank the second assassin. The man, chunin level at least, given his equipment and movement patterns, cut through them with practiced efficiency, but each dispelled clone taught Naruto something new about his fighting style. He favored the chain's reach. Getting inside it was the answer. The original Naruto ducked under a sweeping chain attack and drove a kunai toward the man's exposed side. The assassin twisted, avoiding the lethal strike but taking a shallow cut across his ribs. You little! The man's partner disengaged from Sasuke, both attackers retreating to a more defensible position. Their eyes scanned the surrounding area, searching for something. Where's the jounin? Behind you. Kakashi appeared between them, moving faster than Naruto could track. One strike to each neck, precise, controlled, and both assassins crumpled to the ground, unconscious. The entire encounter had taken less than 30 seconds. Excellent reactions, all of you. Kakashi's voice was calm, but his visible eye was hard. Secure the prisoners. I need to have a conversation with our client. The truth, when it came out, was ugly. Tazuna was not merely a bridge builder. He was the bridge builder, the man responsible for a construction project that threatened the economic stranglehold a shipping magnate named Gato held over the land of waves. Gato had declared the bridge illegal and placed a bounty on Tazuna's head. The minor bandits of the mission briefing were actually trained assassins, with more surely to follow. I couldn't afford a higher-ranked mission, Tazuna admitted, his earlier bluster stripped away by the reality of their situation. Wave is poor, poorer than you can imagine. Everything we have went into this bridge. It was take the C rank and hope for the best, or watch my country starve to death under Gato's boot. Sakura's expression softened with sympathy. Sasuke remained stone-faced. Naruto was thinking about the old man Hokage, and the line the village leader walked between compassion and responsibility. We should turn back, Sakura said hesitantly. This is beyond a C rank. Way beyond. We're genin, we're not equipped for this. She's right, Sasuke added, though his tone suggested reluctance. Engaging with higher-ranked enemies without proper mission classification puts the entire team at risk. They both looked at Kakashi, waiting for his decision. The Jounin was silent for a long moment, his eye distant. The Demon Brothers, he said finally. Chunin missing Nin from the hidden mist. C-rank threats individually, but working together they posed a genuine danger. If they're involved, it's likely that Gato has hired more than just them. So we turn back? That would be the prudent choice. Kakashi's gaze moved to Tazuna, who had gone pale. Leaving this man to his fate would be the safe, sensible, regulation-compliant response. But? Naruto asked quietly. Kakashi looked at him. But there's a reason I told you about Obito. The name hung in the air between them. I won't force this on you, the Jounin continued, addressing all three genin. The mission parameters have changed significantly. If you want to return to Konoha and request reassignment, I won't stop you. It would be the correct tactical decision. What will you do? Sakura asked. Kakashi pulled out his book, flipping it open to a random page. I'll continue the mission. Alone if necessary. That's suicide, Sakura protested. Probably. The Jounin shrugged. But I'm not in the habit of leaving people to die when I have the power to help them. Even if the rules say I should. Silence fell over the group. Then Naruto stepped forward. I didn't become a shinobi to run away from hard things, he said. I became a shinobi to protect people. All people, not just the ones who can afford the right mission rank. He turned to his teammates. I'm going to wave. You two can make your own choice. Sasuke's jaw tightened. For a moment, Naruto thought the Uchiha would refuse, pride warring with pragmatism behind those dark eyes. If you think I'm going to let you outshine me on our first real mission, Sasuke said finally, you're even more foolish than you look. They both looked at Sakura. The pink-haired girl closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and let it out slowly. I hate both of you, she muttered. Fine. Let's go save a country. Kakashi's eye curved in what might have been approval. Team 7. Onward. Chapter 7, Demon in the Mist. The ferryman hadn't said a word since they'd left the dock. He kept his eyes on the water and rowed, and didn't look at any of them, and that told Naruto everything he needed to know about how scared these people were. The massive, incomplete bridge loomed above them as they passed beneath it, a skeleton of steel and stone reaching toward a mainland it would never touch if Gato had his way. Beautiful, isn't it? Tazuna's voice was soft, reverent. My father dreamed of this bridge. My grandfather before him. Generations of wave craftsmen, working toward a future where our children wouldn't have to beg for scraps from merchants who see them as nothing but profit margins. It is impressive, Kakashi admitted. The engineering alone must have required years of planning. Decades. And it'll all be for nothing if Gato succeeds. Tazuna's hands clenched on his knees. That monster has bled our country dry. Controls all the shipping, all the trade. Anyone who tries to stand against him, disappears. Naruto watched the bridge recede into the mist, his mind working through tactical implications. A structure that size, with multiple access points and complex support systems, it would be a nightmare to defend against determined attackers. But it would also be a nightmare to attack against determined defenders. If we can establish a perimeter. They made landfall on a rocky beach, the fog so thick that Naruto could barely see his teammates standing beside him. Kakashi took point, leading them along a narrow path that wound through dense forest. The attack came without warning. One moment, the forest was silent. The next, a massive blade was scything through the air where Kakashi's head had been, the Jounin's reflexes the only thing keeping him alive. Get down! Naruto tackled Tazuna to the ground as the sword, easily 6 feet long, more cleaver than blade, embedded itself in a tree trunk with enough force to send splinters flying in all directions. A figure materialized from the mist, landing on the sword's handle with casual grace. He was tall, bare-chested despite the chill, with bandages wrapped around his lower face and a hetaite that bore the symbol of the hidden mist, but with a slash through the metal that marked him as a missing nin. Sharingan Kakashi. The man's voice was deep, amused. I heard you were escorting the bridge builder. Gato's paying well for this job. Momochi Zabuza. Kakashi's voice was flat. The demon of the hidden mist. So my reputation precedes me. Zabuza pulled his sword free with one hand, the massive weight apparently meaning nothing to him. Let's skip the pleasantries. Hand over the old man, and I'll make your deaths quick. I don't think so. Kakashi reached up and pushed his hetaite aside, revealing his left eye. Naruto felt his breath catch. The eye that Kakashi had kept hidden was red. Not the pink of irritation or the crimson of bloodshot vessels, but a deep, bloody scarlet with 3 black tomos circling the pupil like predators around prey. The Sharingan. He has the Sharingan. There it is. Zabuza's tone shifted to something almost eager. The copy ninja's famous stolen eye. I've always wanted to test myself against it. Protect Tazuna, Kakashi ordered, his stance shifting to combat readiness. Formation C. Don't interfere unless I specifically call for assistance. Sasuke moved to the client's right, Sakura to his left. Naruto positioned himself directly in front, kunai in hand, eyes fixed on the battle about to unfold. The 2 Jounin-level ninja clashed. It was unlike anything Naruto had ever seen. The speed, the power, the sheer violence of it, these weren't the controlled sparring matches of the academy, or even the calculated exchanges of the bell test. This was combat at its most fundamental level, 2 predators fighting for survival with every technique at their disposal. Zabuza's sword sang through the air in sweeping arcs that would have bisected a normal person. Kakashi dodged, deflected, countered, his movements precise, efficient, but clearly reactive. The missing nin had the advantage of reach and raw power. Water style, water dragon technique. The jutsu Naruto had seen Kakashi use during training erupted from the nearby stream, but doubled. 2 massive dragons of churning water rose simultaneously, one from each combatant, and collided with enough force to send spray raining across the entire battlefield. He copied it, Naruto realized. Zabuza started the seals, and Kakashi copied them fast enough to match the completion. So that's what a Sharingan could do. The battle continued, techniques exchanging so rapidly that Naruto could barely track them. Water style, silent killing techniques, taijutsu that would have been lethal against anyone with slower reflexes. Both combatants were dripping wet now, the mist around them replaced by actual fog from their clashing water techniques. Then Zabuza smiled. Water prison technique. The attack came from an angle Naruto hadn't been watching, a water clone, created during the chaos of their exchange, lurking beneath the surface of the stream. It erupted beside Kakashi, one hand forming seals while the other plunged into the water at the Jounin's feet. A sphere of water formed around Kakashi, perfectly transparent but utterly unbreakable. His movements slowed then stopped, held in suspended animation by the prison's chakra-draining properties. And there it is. Zabuza's hand remained submerged in the prison, maintaining the technique. The famous copy ninja, caught by a simple trick. He looked toward the genin, his eyes flat and merciless. Now then. Which of you wants to die first? Run! Kakashi's voice was muffled by the water. He can't leave the prison without releasing me. Take Tazuna and... I don't think so. Zabuza's free hand formed a single seal. Water clone technique. A duplicate rose from the stream, identical in every detail. It picked up the massive sword and began walking toward the genin with deliberate, theatrical slowness. The original has to maintain the prison, the clone explained. But I can handle a few brats without breaking a sweat. Try to run, and I'll cut you down before you take 3 steps. Try to fight and, well... Same result, really. Naruto's mind raced through options. The clone was A rank at minimum, beyond anything they could handle directly. Kakashi was imprisoned. They were isolated, exhausted from travel, facing a legendary assassin with killing intent that pressed against them like a physical weight. Think. There has to be something. The clone raised its sword, preparing a strike that would end Tazuna's life in one blow. And Naruto moved. Not toward the clone, he knew that was suicide. Instead, he dove toward the real Zabuza, toward the hand that maintained the prison. His shadow clones erupted around him, dozens of bodies providing cover and distraction. Interesting. The clone's sword blurred, cutting through duplicates. But your clones can't hurt me, and your original is just as weak. Who said anything about hurting you? Naruto pulled a kunai from his pouch, not throwing it, but pressing the blade against his own palm. Blood welled up, red and vivid. The water prison requires constant chakra maintenance, he said, his voice carrying across the battlefield. And you're using your dominant hand to maintain it. Which means you can't form seals. Which means you can't use most of your jutsu. Zabuza's eyes narrowed. Right now, you're just as vulnerable as we are. Naruto met the missing nin's gaze steadily. So here's the deal. Release Kakashi-sensei, or I bleed out right here and paint your prison the color of the leaf. You're bluffing. Am I? Naruto drew the kunai across his palm, deepening the cut. Blood flowed freely now, dripping onto the water's surface. I've got nothing to lose. If you kill us, Kakashi dies in that prison and you collect your bounty. But if I die first, if I die bleeding, the nine-tailed fox's chakra releases. Even sealed, even contained, even with the fourth Hokage's safeguards in place, do you really want to find out what happens when that much demonic power goes unstable? The battlefield went very, very still. You're lying, Zabuza said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. The seal is absolute. The force work. The force work sealed the force of nature inside a newborn infant. Naruto smiled, though there was no humor in it. You think he managed that without creating some contingencies? It was a bluff. A complete, total, absolutely baseless bluff built on nothing but desperation and the fragments of knowledge Naruto had gathered about his own burden. But Zabuza didn't know that. For an eternal moment, the missing nin's eyes flickered between Naruto's bleeding hand and the imprisoned Kakashi. Calculation warred with caution behind that bandaged face. Then Sasuke moved. The Uchiha hadn't been idle during Naruto's gambit. He'd circled around the battlefield, using the mist and the distraction of Naruto's clones to close the distance. His hands flashed through seals Naruto recognized, fire style, great fireball. But instead of launching it at Zabuza, he aimed at the water prison itself. What? Zabuza's concentration broke for a single instant as steam erupted from the fireball's contact with the prison's surface. It was enough. Kakashi burst free, his Sharingan spinning wildly. One hand caught Zabuza's wrist, twisting it away from the dissipating prison. The other drove a kunai toward the missing nin's throat. Zabuza substituted with his clone, the duplicate taking the killing blow and dissolving into water. Clever children. The real Zabuza retreated, sword raised defensively. Maybe I underestimated them. You definitely underestimated them. Kakashi's voice was hard, his posture radiating killing intent. And you definitely underestimated me. The two jounin faced each other across the churning stream, the battle reset but the dynamics fundamentally changed. Then, from the trees, two Senbon needles flew with surgical precision, striking Zabuza in the neck and dropping him instantly. Thank you for weakening him. The voice came from above, a figure in a white mask, standing on a branch with the posture of a trained killer. I've been tracking Momochi Zabuza for some time. Your assistance in his capture is appreciated. Hunter Nin. Kakashi's stance relaxed slightly, but his Sharingan remained uncovered. From the hidden mist? Correct. I'll be taking the body now. Standard disposal protocols. The masked figure descended, hoisting Zabuza's apparently lifeless form over their shoulder with impossible strength for their slight frame. Wait. Naruto stepped forward, his bleeding hand forgotten. Shouldn't you dispose of the body here? I thought Hunter Nin protocol required immediate cremation to protect village secrets. The masked figure paused. The child is well informed. There was something strange in that voice, amusement, perhaps, or appreciation. You're correct, of course. But circumstances require that I transport the body to a secure location for thorough examination. Zabuza possessed knowledge that the Mist Village wishes to recover. Before anyone could respond, the figure and its burden vanished in a swirl of wind and leaves. Silence fell over the battlefield. Sensei. Naruto's voice was quiet. That Hunter Nin. I know. Kakashi's Sharingan eye finally closed, hidden once more behind his Hitite. Saban to the neck, that's a technique for inducing temporary death-like states, not actual killing. And no legitimate Hunter Nin would transport a body before disposal. So Zabuza is alive. Almost certainly. Which means we have a few days, maybe a week, before he recovers enough to try again. Kakashi swayed slightly, catching himself against a nearby tree. The Sharingan uses a lot of chakra when you're not an Uchiha. I need to rest. Tazuna stepped forward, his face pale but determined. My house isn't far. You can recover there. Naruto looked at his bleeding hand, at his exhausted teammates, at the mist that still clung to the forest like a shroud. Let's go, he said. We've got a lot to prepare for. Chapter 8, Training Days. Tazuna's home was a modest structure perched on the waterfront, its wooden walls weathered by salt spray and its foundations reinforced against the waves that sometimes crashed against the shore during storms. Inside, it was warm, crowded, and filled with the kind of desperate hope that came from having nothing left to lose. Tsunami, Tazuna's daughter, received them with a mixture of relief and worry. Her son Inari, a boy of perhaps 7 or 8, watched from the doorway with eyes that held far too much cynicism for his age. "More people who are going to die," the child muttered, barely loud enough to hear. "Inari." Tsunami's voice was sharp with reprimand. "It's true. They always die. Everyone who tries to help us dies." The boy fled up the stairs, his footsteps echoing through the house like accusations. Tsunami's expression crumpled. "I'm sorry. It's been difficult. For all of us. No apology necessary." Kakashi's voice was gentle despite his obvious exhaustion. "We've all lost people. Some of us just haven't learned how to carry it yet." They settled in, Kakashi claiming a corner to rest and recover, the genin taking bedrolls in the main room. Outside, the sun was setting over a village that seemed to be slowly dying, its streets empty, its people hidden behind locked doors. "Zabuza will return within the week," Kakashi said once they'd eaten, a sparse meal of fish and rice that Tsunami had clearly stretched to accommodate her guests. "Which means we have that long to prepare." "Prepare how?" Sakura asked. "We barely survived the first encounter. Without Naruto's, whatever that was, we'd all be dead. Which is why we're going to train." Kakashi's eye curved slightly. "You three have potential. More than most genin I've seen. But potential isn't enough against someone like Zabuza. You need practical skills, techniques you can deploy without thinking." "What kind of techniques?" "Let's start with the basics." The jounin pushed himself to his feet, moving toward the door. "Follow me." The forest behind Tazuna's house was dense and dark, but Kakashi led them to a small clearing where the trees formed a natural amphitheater. He stopped before 3 particularly tall specimens, their trunks stretching toward the sky. "Chakra control," he said. "The foundation of every technique you'll ever learn. I've noticed that all 3 of you have gaps in this area." "Gaps?" Sasuke's tone was sharp. "You, Sasuke, have excellent control for offensive techniques but neglect defensive and supplementary applications. Your chakra expenditure is wasteful, you achieve results through raw power rather than efficiency." Kakashi turned to Sakura. "You have the opposite problem. Your control is excellent, but your reserves are too low. You run out of chakra before you can leverage your precision." Finally, his eyes settled on Naruto. "And you? Your reserves are vast, your ability to copy techniques is unprecedented, but your actual control of that copied chakra is inconsistent. You reproduce the form of techniques perfectly, but the substance varies wildly." Naruto frowned. "I thought copying meant I was doing it exactly the same way. You copy the configuration, the shape of the chakra and the pattern of its flow. But the execution still depends on your own control." Kakashi pointed to the trees. "That's what we're going to fix." "Tree climbing." "Tree climbing?" Sakura looked skeptical. "That's an academy exercise. No hand climbing. No feet climbing." The jounin walked toward the nearest tree and, without any visible preparation, began walking up its vertical surface, his feet adhering to the bark through chakra alone. "Chakra adhesion. Focus your energy on the soles of your feet, then use it to stick to the surface. Too little, and you'll fall. Too much, and you'll blow yourself off." He released the technique and dropped to the ground with casual grace. "Master this, and your chakra control will improve dramatically. You'll be able to use techniques more efficiently, maintain them longer, and deploy them under combat stress." He tossed 3 kunai at their feet. "Mark your progress on the bark. First one to reach the top gets out of cooking duty for the rest of the mission." He disappeared in a swirl of leaves, presumably returning to the house to rest. The 3 genin looked at each other. "This is stupid," Sasuke muttered, but he was already picking up his kunai. The first hour was humbling. Sakura, with her superior control, made it halfway up her tree before slipping. Sasuke managed perhaps 3 steps before his feet cratered the bark, blowing him backward. And Naruto. Naruto couldn't even stick. Every time he tried to focus chakra at his feet, it surged and dissipated in waves he couldn't seem to regulate. His clones, which he'd created to practice in parallel, fared no better. It was like trying to pour a single drop of water from an ocean. "This is impossible," he growled after his 37th attempt. "My chakra just won't stay still." "Maybe that's the problem." Sakura had descended from her tree, watching his struggles with an analytical expression. "You're trying to force it to stay still. But chakra isn't static, it's always flowing. Maybe you need to work with that instead of against it." Naruto paused, considering. "What do you mean? Instead of trying to create a stable adhesion layer, what if you created a cycle?" Let the chakra flow through your feet, but in a pattern that keeps refreshing the adhesion. She gestured vaguely. Like a waterfall that falls into a pool that feeds back into the waterfall? It was an interesting idea. Naruto closed his eyes, trying to visualize what she was describing. His chakra was vast, that much he'd always known. But he'd always thought of it as a burden, something to be suppressed and controlled. What if he treated it as an asset instead? He gathered energy at his feet, but instead of trying to compress it into a single stable point, he let it flow. Down through his soles, into the wood, then back up through his legs in a continuous circuit. The wood resisted at first. Foreign chakra was inherently rejected by organic material, but the constant refresh of fresh energy overwhelmed the resistance. He took a step. Then another. Then he was walking up the tree's surface, his feet adhering not through static force but through continuous, flowing energy. Holy! Sakura's jaw dropped. You actually did it! Naruto reached the first branch, perhaps 10 meters up, before the concentration required broke his focus. He fell, twisting in midair to land in a crouch. But he was grinning. That felt different, he said. Better. Like I was working with my chakra instead of fighting it. Show off. But Sasuke's voice lacked its usual venom. The Uchiha was studying Naruto with that calculating expression he wore when observing something worth understanding. Do it again. Slower this time. By the end of the first day, all 3 genin had made significant progress. Sakura reached the top of her tree within 4 hours, her natural control allowing her to master the technique relatively quickly. Sasuke followed 2 hours later, his competitive drive pushing him past exhaustion and frustration. Naruto's method was different, less refined than his teammates, but effective. By sunset, he could walk the full height of his tree without falling, though the chakra expenditure was still higher than optimal. More importantly, the exercise had given him insight into his own abilities. His copying wasn't just about reproducing techniques, it was about understanding the fundamental principles behind them. When he'd watched Sakura and Sasuke develop their own approaches to tree climbing, he'd absorbed those insights the same way he absorbed jutsu. Not copying their methods exactly, but integrating their principles into his own framework. It's not just about seeing techniques, Naruto thought. It's about seeing and understanding. The implications were staggering. The second day brought new challenges. Kakashi, recovered enough to walk but still visibly weakened, introduced them to water walking, a more advanced application of the same principles. The lake behind Tizuna's house became their new training ground, its surface calm in the morning air. Same concept, different medium, the Jounin explained. Water is fluid, constantly shifting. You can't rely on a static adhesion point, you have to adjust continuously. For Naruto, this was actually easier than tree climbing. His flowing chakra method was naturally suited to the changing surface, and within an hour he was standing on the water without significant difficulty. Sasuke and Sakura took longer, their more rigid control styles requiring adaptation. Interesting, Kakashi observed, watching Naruto help Sakura find her balance. Your approach is unorthodox, but it seems to be more intuitive than the standard method. It just made sense. Naruto shrugged. Fighting against what I am has never worked. Working with it feels more natural. A valuable insight. The Jounin's eye curved slightly. Perhaps one that applies to more than just chakra control. Before Naruto could ask what he meant, Sasuke fell into the lake with a spectacular splash, breaking the moment. The afternoon was devoted to combat training. Kakashi set them against each other in rotating sparring matches, critiquing their form and suggesting improvements. Naruto's taijutsu was solid but predictable. Sasuke's was technically superior but lacked adaptability. Sakura's was the weakest of the 3 but improving rapidly under pressure. Then the Jounin introduced a new element. Naruto, I want you to copy one of Sasuke's fire techniques. Both boys looked at him sharply. The Great Fireball. Kakashi continued. Sasuke, perform it. Naruto, observe and reproduce. But, Sasuke's jaw tightened. That's the signature technique of my clan. Which is exactly why I want to see what happens when Naruto copies it. The Jounin's tone was mild but firm. Your bloodline gives you a natural affinity for fire. If Naruto can reproduce the technique without that affinity, we'll learn something important about his ability. Sasuke was silent for a long moment. Then, with obvious reluctance, he stepped forward and began forming seals. Fire style, great fireball technique. The jutsu erupted from his mouth in a massive sphere of flame, incinerating a practice target 30 meters away. The heat was intense enough that Sakura stepped back involuntarily. Naruto watched. The pulling sensation rose behind his eyes, stronger than usual, something about the technique's complexity, perhaps, or its connection to Sasuke's chakra nature. He felt his coils shifting, adapting, reconfiguring themselves to match the pattern he was observing. But something was wrong. The integration wasn't complete. He could feel gaps in his understanding, places where the technique relied on fire affinity he didn't possess. His chakra system was trying to compensate, restructuring pathways to approximate what Sasuke achieved naturally, but the result was unstable. I can copy it, he said slowly. But it won't work the same way. Show me. Naruto formed the seals: horse, tiger, ram, monkey, boar, horse, tiger. The chakra gathered in his chest, converting to fire element through a process that felt like forcing water to flow uphill. Fire style, great fireball technique. The fireball that emerged was smaller than Sasuke's, its color slightly off, more orange than the Uchiha's deep red. It traveled the same distance but dissipated faster, lacking the sustained intensity of the original. Interesting. Kakashi studied the scorch marks on the target. You reproduced the technique, but at reduced effectiveness. Roughly 70% of Sasuke's output, I'd estimate. Because I don't have fire affinity? Partly. But also because the technique was designed for Uchiha chakra. Your copy is faithful to the form, but your chakra isn't naturally suited to the content. The Jounin paused. Now try it with a technique that doesn't have elemental requirements. The shadow clone, for example. Naruto blinked. But I already know the shadow clone. You know your shadow clone. Sasuke, create a single shadow clone using the technique I taught you last month. Sasuke nodded, forming the cross seal. Shadow clone technique. A perfect duplicate appeared beside him, identical in every way, but somehow different. There was a quality to its stance, its expression, that was distinctly Sasuke. Naruto observed, felt the familiar pulling, and formed his own seal. Shadow clone technique. The clone that appeared was interesting. It looked like Naruto, but something in its posture was slightly off. Its expression was harder, its stance more rigid. It moved with Sasuke's precision rather than Naruto's fluid spontaneity. The technique transferred perfectly, Kakashi noted. But because Shadow Clone divides the user's chakra and creates a duplicate of their mental state at the moment of creation, your copy carries traces of Sasuke's mindset. So I'm copying not just the jutsu, but the person using it. Naruto frowned. That seems invasive. It's more nuanced than that. You're copying the execution, which naturally includes elements of the executor's style. The Jounin's eye was thoughtful. This could be an advantage or a disadvantage, depending on the situation. If you copy techniques from multiple users, you might develop a fighting style that's completely unpredictable. Or I might become a confused mess who can't commit to any single approach. Also possible. Kakashi shrugged. That's what training is for, integrating these different elements into something cohesive. The days blurred together. Naruto trained obsessively, his shadow clones allowing him to multiply his practice time exponentially. When one clone mastered a particular aspect of a technique, that knowledge transferred to all the others, and to the original, upon distillation. It was like having an army of students who all fed their learning back to a single teacher. He copied everything he could. Kakashi demonstrated basic techniques from each of the 5 elemental natures, and Naruto absorbed them all, imperfectly, in most cases, but functional. Fire and lightning were difficult, his chakra not naturally suited to either. Water was better, and wind was best of all. Something in his nature resonated with the flowing, cutting properties of wind chakra. Earth was strange. He could reproduce earth techniques with surprising fidelity, but they felt heavy. Not in a physical sense, but spiritually. Like his chakra was being forced into a shape it found uncomfortable. Everyone has natural affinities, Kakashi explained. Yours seem to be wind and water. Earth is neutral. Fire and lightning are difficult. Can I improve the difficult ones? With enough practice, yes. But it's generally more efficient to focus on your strengths. The Jounin considered. Though in your case, the normal rules might not apply. Your copying ability might allow you to bypass affinity limitations through sheer repetition. It was something to explore later. For now, Naruto focused on practical combat applications, techniques that would actually help against Zabuza and whoever else Gato might send. On the 5th day, something unexpected happened. Naruto was practicing water walking on the lake, alone with the pre-dawn darkness, when he noticed a figure on the shore. Feminine, from the silhouette, dressed in a simple pink kimono with long black hair that reached past the waist. You're up early, the figure said as Naruto approached. The voice was soft, musical, androgynous in a way that made gender difficult to determine. So are you. Naruto stepped onto the shore, water dripping from his sandals. You're from the village? I'm a traveler. The figure turned, revealing a face of startling beauty, delicate features, dark eyes that held secrets, lips curved in a gentle smile. I came to gather herbs. The forest here has many plants with medicinal properties. Something about the encounter felt off. Naruto's instincts, honed through weeks of training and the constant tension of their mission, were screaming warnings he couldn't quite articulate. Herbs, he repeated. In the dark? The best ones are found before sunrise, when the dew is still fresh. The figure's smile didn't waver. You're a shinobi from the Leaf Village. Here to protect the bridge builder? Naruto's eyes narrowed. How do you know that? Everyone in Wave knows. The old man hired bodyguards from the mainland. It's the talk of what little remains of our community. A pause. Tell me, why do you train so hard? What drives you to wake before dawn and push yourself until you collapse? The question was unexpected, disarming. Naruto found himself answering before his caution could intervene. I have people I want to protect. And to protect them, I need to be strong. People? The figure's head tilted slightly. Like the bridge builder? Or your teammates? Both. And more than that. Naruto looked out over the lake, its surface beginning to glow with the first hints of sunrise. I want to be acknowledged. I want people to see me, really see me, and know that I'm worth something. That I'm not just. He trailed off, uncertain why he was sharing this with a stranger. You're not just what you carry inside. The figure's voice was soft, knowing. That's what you wanted to say, isn't it? Naruto went still. Don't worry. The figure rose, brushing grass from the kimono. Your secret is safe with me. I understand what it's like to be defined by something you didn't choose. Who are you? For a moment, the stranger's expression shifted, something vulnerable appearing beneath the gentle mask. Then it was gone, replaced by that serene smile. My name is Haku. I hope we meet again, Naruto-kun. The figure disappeared into the forest, leaving Naruto alone with the rising sun and a growing sense of unease. Haku. He filed the name away, certain that he hadn't seen the last of this mysterious stranger. Chapter 9, Bridge of Shadows. On the 7th day, Zabuza came. The morning had started normally enough, Tazuna heading to the bridge with Team 7 as escort, workers emerging from their homes to continue the slow, dangerous work of construction. The air was heavy with mist, as always, visibility dropping to perhaps 30 meters. Naruto felt the attack before he saw it. It was something he developed during training, a sensitivity to chakra fluctuations that went beyond the standard academy detection methods. When Zabuza's killing intent flared across the bridge, pressing down like a physical weight, Naruto was already moving. Contact! He shouted, shoving Tazuna behind a stack of building materials. Sasuke, high position! Sakura, defensive perimeter! His teammates responded instantly, weeks of training converting panic into action. Sasuke leaped to a crane platform overlooking the bridge. Sakura positioned herself between Tazuna and the approaching threat, kunai in hand. From the mist emerged figures, 2 of them, moving with the fluid grace of trained killers. Zabuza, recovered from his near-death experience, his massive sword resting on his shoulder. And beside him, the masked hunter Nin who had captured him before. The brats are still here. Zabuza's voice carried across the bridge. I was hoping Kakashi would have sent them home by now. They're persistent. The masked figure, Haku, Naruto realized with a chill, spoke with the same gentle voice from their lakeside meeting. It's almost admirable. It's stupid. The missing Nin's eyes found Kakashi, who was stepping forward to meet them. But I suppose that's what makes them entertaining prey. Haku. Naruto stepped forward, ignoring Sakura's hiss of warning. That's your name, isn't it? The person I met at the lake. The mask tilted slightly. You remember. I remember everything. Naruto's voice was flat. I also remember what you said about being defined by things you didn't choose. Was that just manipulation? Getting information about the enemy through false sympathy? Behind the mask, something shifted, a flicker of genuine emotion breaking through the professional composure. Everything I said was true. Haku replied quietly. I am what circumstances made me. As are you. The difference is that I've accepted my role, while you still fight against yours. My role isn't to be a monster's container. Naruto's hands formed the cross seal. And it isn't to give up because the path is hard. Shadow clone technique. 20 duplicates appeared, spreading across the bridge in tactical formation. Deal with the genin. Zabuza ordered, pulling his sword free. Kakashi is mine. Of course, Zabuza-sama. Haku moved, and the battle began. Fighting Haku was unlike anything Naruto had experienced. The masked ninja's speed was incredible, not Jounin level, perhaps, but far beyond what a normal opponent should have been capable of. Saban needles flew from impossible angles, targeting pressure points with surgical precision. Naruto's clones fell in waves, their knowledge flooding back to him with each distillation. Ice. The word crystallized in his mind as he watched Haku form techniques from pure frozen water. Bloodline limit ice release. You've never seen this before. Haku observed, dodging a kunai strike. The Hayatan Kekiai Genkai. The ability to combine water and wind chakra into ice. My clan was massacred for possessing it. And now you use it to serve a monster like Zabuza? Zabuza-sama saved me. Something fierce entered Haku's voice. When my father killed my mother and tried to kill me, when my entire village turned against me for what I was born with, Zabuza-sama gave me purpose. He made me his tool, his weapon. And I will serve him until I die. The temperature around them dropped dramatically. Ice began forming in the air, coalescing into flat mirrors that surrounded them in a dome of reflective surfaces. Secret technique, demonic mirroring ice crystals. Naruto found himself trapped within a cage of ice, mirrors reflecting his image infinitely in all directions. And then Haku stepped into one of the mirrors, and the reflection appeared in all of them simultaneously. This is my ultimate technique. Within these mirrors I can move at speeds you cannot hope to match. You will die here, Naruto-kun. I'm sorry it has to be this way. The attack came from everywhere at once. Senbon needles pierced Naruto's body, arms, legs, shoulders, back. Not lethal, not yet, but agonizing. His clones fell as quickly as he could create them, the ice dome somehow interfering with his ability to mass-produce duplicates. Blood ran down his face, his vision blurring with pain and exhaustion. Think, he commanded himself. There has to be a way. There's always a way. But the mirrors were everywhere. Haku's speed was impossible. And his chakra, vast as it was beginning to flag under the constant drain of maintaining clones only to have them destroyed. Then, from outside the dome, came a familiar voice. Fire style, great fireball technique. Sasuke's flames crashed against the ice mirrors, and for a moment, just a moment, one of them cracked. Sasuke! Naruto shouted. Don't! But the Uchiha was already inside the dome, having used a momentary weakness to slip through. He landed beside Naruto, his Sharingan activated, 2 tomos spinning in each eye. Your eyes! Naruto started. I told you I wouldn't let you outshine me, Sasuke said, his voice strained. We faced this together. You idiot. Now we're both trapped. At least we're trapped together. Naruto felt something warm spread through his chest. Teamwork, he thought. Even now. The attack resumed, but now there were 2 targets instead of 1. Sasuke's Sharingan allowed him to track Haku's movements, partially, imperfectly, giving them moments of warning before each strike. Naruto's clones provided cover and distraction, buying seconds that accumulated into something approaching a defensive strategy. But it wasn't enough. You can't win. Haku's voice echoed from every mirror. Your teamwork is admirable, but you lack the power to break through my technique. Then we'll find another way. Naruto's hands formed seals, not the shadow clone this time, but something else. Something he'd been developing in secret, during the late-night training sessions when his teammates were asleep. Wind style, great breakthrough. Wind howled through the ice dome, creating a vortex that disrupted the freezing air and obscured Haku's vision. Sasuke! Now! The Uchiha understood instantly. Fire techniques were less effective against ice, but fire through wind. Fire style, great fireball technique. The fireball caught the wind vortex, feeding on the oxygen and expanding into a spiraling inferno that filled the entire dome. Ice cracked. Mirrors shattered. And for one crucial moment, Haku's technique faltered. Naruto moved. He'd been copying Haku's movements since the fight began, the precise footwork, the economy of motion, the way the ninja shifted weight before each attack. Now, channeling everything he learned, he launched himself toward the opening in the mirrors. His fist connected with Haku's mask. The impact sent them both flying out of the crumbling ice dome, landing on the bridge's surface in a tangle of limbs. Naruto came up first, kunai pressed against Haku's throat. The mask had cracked, falling away to reveal the beautiful face from the lakeside meeting. Dark eyes stared up at Naruto with an expression of peaceful acceptance. Do it, Haku whispered. Fulfill your duty as a shinobi. Naruto's hand trembled. You're strong enough. Haku's voice was gentle, almost kind. Strong enough to protect your precious people. I can see it in you, the will to do whatever it takes. So take my life. Let me die in service to Zabuza-sama. Naruto's vision blurred. I don't want to kill you. But you have to. Haku smiled, a real smile, soft and sad. That's what being a tool means. We have no will of our own. We exist only to fulfill our master's purpose. That's not true. Naruto's voice cracked. You're not a tool. You're a person. You made your own choices, to follow Zabuza, to fight for him, to face us today. Those were your choices. Not his. Something shifted in Haku's expression, surprise, perhaps, or confusion. No one has ever said that to me before. Then the people around you were idiots. Naruto pulled back, removing the kunai from Haku's throat. I'm not going to kill you! There has to be another way. Naruto! A sound cut through the mist, Zabuza's voice, raised in pain or rage. Haku's head whipped toward the source, eyes widening. Zabuza-sama! Without warning, Haku vanished, moving faster than Naruto could track, toward the battle between the jounin. Acting on instinct, Naruto followed. The scene he found would haunt him for years to come. Kakashi stood with his arm extended, lightning crackling around his fist. The Chidori, a technique Naruto had glimpsed during training but never seen deployed in actual combat, was buried in Haku's chest. Haku, who had thrown themselves between Kakashi's killing blow and Zabuza's exposed body. Haku! Zabuza's voice came out wrong. He didn't finish the question. Because you are. Haku's voice had gone wet and thin. Precious to me. This is what I was made for. Kakashi pulled his arm back. The lightning died. Haku went down, and Naruto stood there and couldn't do anything at all. You knew. Zabuza's voice had changed again, colder now, harder. You knew the brat would sacrifice themselves. No. Kakashi's tone was flat. I didn't anticipate this. Then you're a fool. Haku's only purpose was to serve me. Even in death. The missing nin's voice trailed off, his eyes fixed on the body before him. Is that all they were to you? Naruto stepped forward, trembling with anger and grief. A tool? A weapon to be used and discarded? Zabuza turned to face him, and for a second, Zabuza looked tired. The kid had a choice, he said quietly. Every step of the way, they could have left. Could have found another life, another purpose. But they stayed. They chose to be my tool. That doesn't make it right. Right? Zabuza laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. There's no right in this world, kid. There's only power and those who wield it. Those who have the strength to protect what they care about, and those who are crushed beneath stronger feet. If you really believe that. Naruto's voice broke. Then Haku died for nothing. The words hit like a physical blow. Zabuza staggered slightly, his expression shifting through emotions too complex to name. Before he could respond, a new sound echoed across the bridge, the clatter of many feet, the murmur of many voices. From the mist emerged a small army, led by a diminutive figure in an expensive suit. Gato had arrived. Chapter 10, Dawn Over Water. The shipping magnate was shorter than Naruto had expected, barely reaching Sasuke's shoulder, with a rounded face and small, mean eyes that surveyed the scene before him with undisguised contempt. Behind him stood perhaps 50 mercenaries, armed with clubs and swords and the dull confidence of men who had never faced real opposition. Well. Gato's voice was oily, satisfied. It looks like the famous demon of the mist isn't so fearsome after all. Beaten by a handful of children and a one-eyed has-been. Gato. Zabuza's voice was dangerously quiet. What are you doing here? Collecting my investment. The small man smiled, revealing teeth that were slightly too white. Did you really think I was going to pay your absurd fee? Hiring missing nin is expensive. But letting them do most of the work and then finishing things with my own men? Much more cost-effective. You're betraying me. I'm optimizing my business model. Gato gestured toward the bridge, toward Tazuna, who had emerged from hiding with Sakura at his side. Kill them all. The old man, the ninja, anyone who's seen too much. We'll blame it on the demon and his apprentice, a tragic tale of monsters run amok. The mercenaries began to advance. Zabuza was silent for a long moment, staring at Gato with an expression that had gone completely blank. Haku died for this, he said softly. Died protecting me from a killing blow. And you? Haku was a useful tool. Gato's smile widened. But tools can always be replaced. Something changed in Zabuza's posture, a stillness that went beyond simple combat readiness. He bent down, picking up a kunai from where it had fallen during the battle. Kid! His voice was directed at Naruto, though his eyes never left Gato. You asked me if Haku was just a tool. If their death meant nothing. I remember. I want you to know something. Zabuza gripped the kunai in his teeth, his broken arms hanging uselessly at his sides. Haku was the closest thing I've had to family in 20 years. And I'm going to kill the man who took them from me. He moved. The mercenaries fell like wheat before a scythe. Zabuza was wounded, exhausted, operating on nothing but rage and the desperate strength of a man with nothing left to lose. Swords and clubs found his body, once, twice, a dozen times, but he kept moving, kept killing, carving a path through the small army with nothing but a kunai clenched between his teeth. Gato's eyes went wide with terror. He turned to run, but Zabuza was faster, always faster, even now, even dying on his feet. The kunai found Gato's throat. The shipping magnate fell, and the mercenaries, suddenly leaderless, suddenly facing a blood-soaked demon who refused to die, broke and ran. Zabuza collapsed beside Haku's body, his breathing shallow, his wounds finally catching up with him. "Kid!" His voice was barely a whisper now. "Come here." Naruto approached slowly, uncertain what to expect. "You were right." Zabuza's eyes were fixed on Haku's peaceful face. "They weren't just a tool. They were precious to me. I was just too much of a coward to admit it. Zabuza, take care of Wave." The missing nin's hand found Haku's, cold fingers intertwining. "Finish the bridge. Give these people the future we couldn't have." Zabuza's eyes closed. His breathing stopped. Snow fell, which made no sense, cloudless sky, wrong season, and settled over both of them without any sound. "Haku." Naruto's voice came out cracked. "Even now." Kakashi didn't say anything at first. Then, the ice release. One last time. Naruto's knees hit the ground and he cried. The bridge was completed 3 weeks later. Team 7 stayed, helping with construction, providing security against the scattered remnants of Gato's organization. The villagers of Wave, freed from the shipping magnate's grip, threw themselves into the work with desperate energy, as if building the bridge could somehow build a future worth living in. On the day of completion, the entire village gathered at the bridge's entrance for a dedication ceremony. Tazuna stood at the podium, his weathered face streaming with tears he didn't bother to hide. "This bridge," he said, his voice carrying across the crowd, "represents everything we lost and everything we might yet become. It was built with blood and sacrifice, with the lives of heroes who gave everything so that our children might have a chance." His eyes found Team 7, standing at the edge of the crowd. "I want to dedicate this bridge to those heroes. To Haku, who died protecting someone they loved. To Zabuza, who found redemption in his final moments. And to the ninja of Konoha, who taught us that strength isn't about power, it's about having something worth fighting for." He turned to face the completed structure, its graceful arch spanning the sea like a promise. "I named this bridge, the Great Naruto Bridge." The crowd erupted in cheers. Naruto stood frozen, uncertain he'd heard correctly. Beside him, Sakura smiled through tears. Sasuke's expression was unreadable, but something in his posture suggested approval. "Come on." Kakashi's hand found Naruto's shoulder. "Let's go home." They walked across the bridge, the Great Naruto Bridge, toward the waiting boat and the long journey back to Konoha. Behind them, the village of Wave began the slow process of rebuilding. And somewhere in the mist, snow continued to fall. Chapter 11, Return to the Village. The streets of Konoha seemed smaller after Wave. Naruto walked through the familiar avenues with new eyes, noting the faces that turned toward him, still wary, still uncertain, but no longer quite so hostile. Word of the mission had spread through the shinobi grapevine, and while the details remained classified, enough had leaked to shift perception slightly. The demon boy had helped save a country. That counted for something. The debriefing with the Hokage took hours. Naruto recounted everything: the initial ambush, the encounter with Zabuza, the Ice Dome battle, the final confrontation with Gato. The old man listened with his characteristic patience, asking questions that revealed far more about the situation than Naruto's answers contained. "You've grown," the Hokage said finally, setting down his pipe. "All three of you. But you especially, Naruto. I just did what anyone would have done." "No." The old man's eyes were kind but serious. "You did what very few would have done. You showed mercy to an enemy, compassion for a stranger, and courage in the face of impossible odds. Those are the qualities of a leader." Naruto felt heat rising to his cheeks. "I'm not a leader, old man. I'm just a genin. For now." The Hokage smiled. "But the Chunin exams are approaching. I think it's time to see what else you're capable of." The Chunin exam announcement came 2 weeks later. Team 7 gathered in their usual meeting spot, Training Ground 7, where they'd first learned the meaning of teamwork, to receive the news from Kakashi. "The exams begin in 1 month," the Jounin explained. "They'll be held here in Konoha, with participants from multiple hidden villages. The format varies each year, but typically includes written tests, survival challenges, and one-on-one combat." "And you think we're ready?" Sakura asked nervously. "I think you have the potential to be ready." Kakashi's eye curved. "Whether you realize that potential is up to you." 1 month. Sasuke's expression was focused, calculating. "What kind of training can we do in that time?" "That depends on what you want to learn." The Jounin looked at each of them in turn. "Sakura, your chakra control is excellent, but your reserves limit your effectiveness. I'd recommend intensive stamina training, plus expanding your jutsu repertoire to include more efficient techniques." "And me?" Sasuke demanded. "Your taijutsu is your strongest asset, followed by your fire techniques. But you rely too heavily on the Sharingan, which is still developing. I'd suggest focusing on speed training and refining your existing techniques rather than learning new ones. What about me? Naruto asked. Kakashi was silent for a long moment. Your situation is unique, he said finally. You have access to more techniques than most jounin, but you haven't fully integrated them into your fighting style. You can reproduce almost anything you see, but you default to the same few methods in actual combat. So what should I do? You need sparring partners. The jounin's tone was thoughtful. Multiple partners, with different styles, who can force you to adapt and use your full range of abilities. I'll arrange introductions with some people who might be willing to help. What kind of people? Kakashi's eye crinkled. You'll see. The first of Kakashi's arranged partners arrived 3 days later. Meito Guy was not what Naruto expected. Tall, muscular, dressed in a skin-tight green bodysuit that left absolutely nothing to the imagination. Bowl-cut hair so perfectly maintained it seemed to defy physics. Eyebrows thick enough to qualify as independent organisms. And a smile so bright it was almost physically painful to look at. So you are Naruto Kyuin? The man's voice seemed designed to carry across continents. Kakashi has told me much about your youthful spirit. I am Might Gi, Konoha's sublime green beast, and I will be your training partner for the next week. Naruto blinked. You're a jounin? The mightiest of jounin? Guy struck a pose, sunset inexplicably appearing behind him despite the midday sun. My eternal rival Kakashi and I have faced each other 53 times. Our current record is 51-51, with one tie. That's impressive? Indeed. And now I shall teach you the power of youth. Guy dropped into a fighting stance that seemed to violate several laws of physics. Come! Let us begin! The training that followed was the most physically demanding experience of Naruto's life. Guy's specialty was taijutsu, pure, unaugmented hand-to-hand combat taken to superhuman levels. He moved faster than Naruto could track, struck harder than seemed possible without chakra enhancement, and demonstrated a flexibility that would have made a professional contortionist weep with envy. And he expected Naruto to keep up. Your copying ability is impressive! Guy bellowed, effortlessly avoiding a combination Naruto had copied from watching the man's own movements. But copying form is not the same as copying power. True taijutsu comes from the body, not the mind. Then how am I supposed to learn it? Naruto gasped, doubled over with exhaustion. By training your body until it matches your technique. Guy's eyes literally sparkled. 1,000 push UPS. 1,000 SIT UPS. 1,000 squats. Every day until the exams. That's impossible. Nothing is impossible for youth. Despite his initial reservations, Naruto threw himself into Guy's regimen. His shadow clones made the physical training manageable. 100 clones doing the exercises simultaneously transferred the muscle memory, if not the actual physical development, and within days, he began to see improvement. His taijutsu became faster, more fluid. His strikes carried more power. And most importantly, he learned to integrate the forms he'd copied into something approaching an original style. Excellent! Guy roared after a particularly successful sparring session. Your flames of youth burn brighter every day. At this rate, you will surely become a splendid ninja. Thanks, Guy-sensei. Naruto managed a genuine smile despite his exhaustion. This training has been intense. But I can feel myself improving. That is the power of hard work. The green beast gave him a thumbs up. Natural talent is nothing compared to dedication and effort. Remember that, Naruto Kyuin. It was, Naruto reflected, surprisingly good advice. Guy was followed by Yuhi Kurenai, a jounin specializing in genjutsu. Where Guy was loud and physical, Kurenai was subtle and psychological. Her training focused on mental discipline, recognizing illusions, breaking free from foreign chakra influence, and understanding the vulnerabilities that genjutsu exploited. Your copying ability makes you particularly susceptible, she explained during their first session. You're used to absorbing information quickly, without filtering. A skilled genjutsu user can exploit that openness. How do I defend against it? By learning to distinguish between external sensory input and internal chakra manipulation. Her red eyes met his steadily. Feel my technique. Tell me when it starts. Naruto concentrated, trying to sense any change in his environment. Nothing. Everything seemed normal. The training ground looked the same. Kurenai stood before him, hands at her sides, expression neutral. It started 30 seconds ago, she said quietly. Naruto blinked, and suddenly the world shifted. They were no longer in the training ground but in a dark forest, trees pressing close, shadows moving at the edge of vision. Fear crawled up his spine, primal and irrational. This is genjutsu. Kurenai's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. A manipulation of your sensory chakra pathways. The fear you feel is real, but the cause is imaginary. How do I break it? Disrupt your chakra flow. A sudden surge or cessation will interrupt the technique. Naruto focused, drawing on his vast reserves. He pushed chakra outward in a pulse. And the forest vanished, replaced by the familiar training ground. Good. Kurenai nodded approvingly. Your reserves make brute force disruption viable, though a more elegant solution would be preferable. What would be more elegant? Learning to create a continuous chakra fluctuation that makes sustained genjutsu impossible. Like creating static on a radio signal. She smiled slightly. But that requires the kind of precise control you currently lack. For now, the surge method will serve. They spent the week practicing, Kurenai catching him in increasingly subtle illusions, Naruto learning to recognize the signs of manipulation and break free. By the end, he could detect most genjutsu within seconds of their activation and dispel them with minimal effort. You're a quick study, Kurenai said on their final day. Your brain seems to process information differently than most people. It's an advantage in combat, though it creates vulnerabilities elsewhere. What kind of vulnerabilities? She studied him for a long moment. You absorb techniques without fully understanding their implications. That works fine for combat applications, but some jutsu carry psychological or spiritual costs that aren't immediately apparent. Like what? Like techniques that tap into negative emotions. Or ones that connect you to other entities. Her eyes flickered with something unreadable. Be careful what you copy, Naruto. Not everything that looks like power is worth having. The third and final training partner was unexpected. Naruto arrived at Training Ground 44, the Forest of Death, infamous throughout Konoha for its dangerous wildlife and lethal terrain, to find a purple-haired woman in a trench coat lounging against a massive tree, eating dango with aggressive casualness. You're the copycat kid, she said without preamble. Anko. Special jounin. We're gonna have fun. What kind of fun? Anko's grin was slightly manic. The kind that involves running for your life while trying not to die. The training, it turned out, was survival-focused. Anko dropped Naruto into the Forest of Death with nothing but a kunai and told him to make it to the tower at the center within 3 days. The forest is full of giant animals, poisonous plants, and natural hazards that'll kill you if you're careless, she'd explained. It's also where the second stage of the Chunin exams usually takes place. Consider this a preview. 3 days in the Forest of Death taught Naruto more about practical survival than the academy had in years. He learned which plants were safe to eat, which animals could be fought, and which should be avoided, how to create shelter, how to move silently through hostile terrain. He also learned to trust his instincts. The forest was full of threats that couldn't be perceived through normal senses, predators that hunted by vibration, insects that could detect body heat from 50 meters, plants that reached toward movement. Naruto's copying ability was useless here. There were no techniques to observe, only an environment that demanded constant adaptation. By the end of the 3 days, he emerged at the tower with a new appreciation for the basics of shinobi work. Not bad, Anko admitted, examining the scratches and bruises that covered his body. You've got decent instincts. Just needed someone to force you to use them. Why did Kakashi-sensei think this would help? Because all your fancy copy techniques don't mean squat if you can't survive long enough to use them. Anko popped another dango into her mouth. The Chunin exams aren't just about combat. They're about resourcefulness, endurance, and the ability to function under pressure. You've got the raw materials. Now you need the experience. And the exams will provide that experience? If they don't kill you first. Her grin returned, sharp and slightly unsettling. But that's half the fun, isn't it? Chapter 12, The Storm Gathers. The final week before the Chunin exams arrived with a sense of gathering tension. Foreign shinobi began appearing in Konoha's streets, genin from sand, from mist, from smaller villages Naruto had only heard of in academy lectures. They moved through the village with the wariness of predators in unfamiliar territory, sizing up potential opponents, gathering intelligence. Team 7 had dinner together the night before the exams began, a quiet meal at Ichiraku Ramen, the one place in the village where Naruto had always felt welcomed. Nervous? Sakura asked, barely touching her food. A little, Naruto admitted. But mostly excited. This is our chance to prove ourselves. Prove ourselves to who? Sasuke's voice was flat, his eyes distant. The village that ignored us? The system that tried to hold us back? To ourselves. Naruto met his teammate's gaze steadily. I don't care about what others think anymore. I care about knowing what I'm capable of. Sasuke was silent for a long moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. The sand team concerns me, Sakura said quietly. The one with the red-haired boy. Gaara, I think his name is. Naruto had noticed him too, a pale figure with dark-rimmed eyes and a massive gourd strapped to his back. There was something profoundly unsettling about the way he moved through crowds, as if the people around him didn't exist. And when their eyes had met briefly across a crowded street, Naruto had felt something stir in the depths of his stomach. Not the fox, not exactly, but something that recognized something similar. Another Jinchuriki, he'd realized with a chill. Another container. We'll deal with whatever comes, he said aloud. That's what we've been training for. Together, Sakura added. Together. Even Sasuke agreed. The first phase of the Chunin exams was a written test administered in a large classroom, with genin from all participating villages seated in rows that mixed potential enemies and allies alike. The proctor was a scarred man named Marino Ibiki, whose presence radiated the kind of intimidation that came from genuine experience with pain, both inflicting and enduring it. The rules are simple, he announced, his voice carrying easily through the room. This test has 10 questions. You start with 10 points. Each wrong answer loses you a point. Cheating loses you 2 points. If any member of your team reaches 0 points, the entire team fails. The questions, Naruto discovered quickly, were impossibly difficult. They covered advanced topics in cryptography, tactical analysis, and technical shinobi theory that went far beyond anything the academy had taught. Around him, other genin were coming to the same conclusion. Subtle movements, tiny gestures, the kind of covert communication that marked trained intelligence operatives. The Hyuga from Konoha used his Byakugan. The puppeteer from Sand deployed some kind of mechanical eye. Various genjutsu specialists created. He raised his hand. Ibiki's eyes found him. Giving up? No. Naruto slammed his palm on the desk, the sound echoing through the suddenly silent room. I'm calling your bluff. What? This entire test has been about information gathering under pressure. The questions were impossible, the cheating rules were designed to be circumvented, and now you're threatening us with consequences that would undermine the entire purpose of the exam. Naruto met the proctor's gaze steadily. If we could be banned forever for failing one question, no one would ever take the risk. And without risk-takers, you'd have no Chunin. Ibiki stared at him for a long moment. Then he smiled, a terrifying expression on that scarred face. You're not wrong, kid. He looked around the room at the remaining genin. Everyone's still here, passes the first phase. The room erupted in confused relief. The 10th question was a test of will. Ibiki explained. On missions, shinobi face situations with incomplete information and severe consequences. Those who can't handle that pressure have no business leading others. His eyes found Naruto again. Of course, some people are too stubborn to quit regardless. Those are either the best shinobi, or the first to die. Before Naruto could respond, the windows exploded inward. A banner unfurled across the front of the room, announcing the arrival of the second proctor, Mitarashi Enko, grinning like a madwoman. All right, brats. The real fun starts now. Follow me to the forest of death. The second phase of the exams was everything Enko had promised and more. Teams were given either a heaven scroll or an earth scroll, with the objective of obtaining the matching scroll and reaching the tower at the forest center within 5 days. Combat was expected. Deaths were not prohibited. Team 7 entered the forest with their heaven scroll and a simple strategy: move fast, engage minimally, and avoid the truly dangerous opponents until they'd secured their target. The strategy lasted approximately 6 hours. The attack came from the trees, a massive snake, larger than anything natural, crashing through the canopy with enough force to separate the team. Sakura and Sasuke went one direction. Naruto, in the path of the snake's lunge, was swallowed whole. Inside the beast's stomach, surrounded by digestive fluids and the remains of previous meals, Naruto felt something snap within him. Not fear, though that was present. Not rage, though that was building. Something deeper. The thing that lived in his core, that had been present since his first breath, that responded to mortal threats with ancient, terrible power. The fox's chakra surged through him. It was like being struck by lightning from the inside. Red energy crackled across his skin, burning away the stomach acid before it could harm him. His fingernails lengthened into claws. His pupils narrowed to slits. And somewhere in the depths of his mind, a voice laughed, low and hungry and patient. Naruto's claws tore through the snake's belly, spilling him into the forest in a shower of blood and viscera. The beast collapsed, dead before it hit the ground. And Naruto stood in the carnage, breathing hard, trying to force the foreign power back into its cage. Impressive. The voice came from the shadows. A figure emerged, tall, pale, with long black hair and eyes that seemed to hold secrets older than the village itself. Such power, the stranger continued. And such poor control. The 9 tails truly wasted on an ignorant child. Naruto snarled, actually snarled, the fox's influence still bleeding through. Who are you? My name is Orochimaru. The figure smiled, revealing teeth that were slightly too long. "And I've come to give young Sasuke-kun a gift." The battle that followed was not a fight, it was a slaughter. Orochimaru moved with the casual grace of someone operating far below their capabilities, toying with Naruto's attacks like a cat with a particularly amusing mouse. Every technique Naruto threw at him was countered effortlessly. Every strategy was anticipated and dismantled. And through it all, those yellow eyes watched with scientific interest. "Fascinating," Orochimaru murmured, avoiding a wind technique that would have bisected a normal opponent. "You copy jutsu almost as effectively as the Sharingan. But you lack the experience to use them properly." He appeared directly in front of Naruto, too fast to track. "Perhaps I should seal that ability, along with the beast within you." His fingers pressed against Naruto's stomach, chakra flaring in a pattern that felt fundamentally wrong. 5-element seal. Pain erupted through Naruto's body, worse than anything he'd ever experienced, worse than the snake's stomach acids, worse than the accumulated wounds of every fight he'd survived. The fox's chakra, which had been slowly receding, was suddenly cut off entirely, locked behind a barrier of foreign energy. His copying ability flickered, faded, went silent. "There." Orochimaru smiled as Naruto collapsed. "That should keep you out of trouble while I attend to my real objective." He vanished, leaving Naruto alone in the darkness of the forest floor. Consciousness returned slowly, in fragments and flashes. Sakura's face pale with worry. Sasuke's voice sharp with urgency. The interior of a hollow tree, serving as shelter. Pain, constant, throbbing pain centered on his stomach where the seal had been applied. "He's waking up." Sakura's relief was palpable. "Naruto, can you hear me? What happened?" His voice was a croak. "A snake ninja attacked us." Sasuke's expression was strange, haunted, almost. There was something on his neck, hidden beneath his collar, that hadn't been there before. "He did something to you. To both of us." "The seal." Naruto tried to reach for his chakra and found it sluggish, unresponsive. His copying ability, when he tested it, was completely gone. "He sealed my power. Can you undo it?" "I don't know." The admission felt like failure. "I don't know how to break seals." "Then we'll find someone who does." Sakura's voice was firm. "But first, we need to survive this exam. Do we have the scrolls?" "No." Sasuke's jaw tightened. "We still need an Earth Scroll. And there are teams hunting us, the Snake Ninja's subordinates." Naruto forced himself to sit up, ignoring the protests of his damaged body. "Then we hunt them first." "You can barely move." "I don't need to move." He closed his eyes, taking stock of what remained. The fox's chakra was sealed, but his own reserves, while diminished, were still substantial. His copy techniques were inaccessible, but the knowledge remained, waiting to be reclaimed once the seal was broken. And his will. His will was unbroken. "I need you to be my eyes," he said, addressing his teammates. "Find me an opponent. Someone using techniques I can observe. If I can't copy right now, I can at least remember for when I can." "That's insane." "That's survival." Naruto opened his eyes, meeting Sasuke's gaze. "Orochimaru wanted to take you somewhere. Wanted to give you a gift. Whatever that means, it can't be good. We need to get out of this forest and warn the village." Sasuke's hand moved unconsciously to his neck, touching whatever lay hidden there. "You don't know what he did to me." "No. But I know what he tried to do to me, take away what makes me dangerous." "Which means he sees us both as threats." Naruto managed a ghost of his usual grin. "That's almost flattering, when you think about it." Despite everything, Sasuke's lips twitched. "You're an idiot." "Yeah. But I'm a determined idiot." Naruto extended his hand. "So, partners?" Sasuke looked at the offered hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and clasped it. "Partners." They reached the tower with hours to spare. The journey had been harrowing, 3 encounters with hostile teams, 2 near misses with the forest's natural predators, and a final desperate sprint when they realized how close they were cutting it. But they'd emerged with both scrolls, all 3 members still standing, if barely, and something that hadn't existed before. Real trust. The tower's interior was a warren of corridors and rooms, filled with other successful teams recovering from their own ordeals. Medical needs circulated, treating injuries and assessing conditions. When Naruto described the seal Orochimaru had placed on him, the attending medic's face went pale. "That's not something I can remove," she said quietly. "You'll need someone with specialized knowledge. I'll inform the Hokage." Sasuke was similarly examined, the mark on his neck identified as something called a cursed seal, that required immediate attention. He was taken to a secure room for containment and treatment, which left Naruto alone with his thoughts and his sealed abilities. He sat in the tower's medical wing, staring at his hands that had once channeled techniques from a dozen different styles, that had formed seals for jutsu he'd never been formally taught. Now they felt empty. Ordinary. Is this what it's like for everyone else? He wondered. Having to learn everything the hard way, one technique at a time? The door opened, and the third Hokage entered. Naruto. The old man's face was grave. I've been briefed on your encounter. Orochimaru's presence in the village is troubling. He wanted Sasuke. For something. Yes. The curse seal he applied is a particularly vicious piece of work, designed to corrupt and control. The Hokage sat beside him, his robe settling around him like a shroud. Sasuke's treatment will take time, but he should recover. And me? The 5 elements seal is advanced Fuinjutsu. Removing it requires expertise that most medics don't possess. The Hokage paused. Fortunately, I know someone who does. Who? A former student of mine. Someone with complicated history, but unmatched skill in sealing techniques. The old man's expression was unreadable. I've sent word. They should arrive within the week. The exams will continue. The preliminary rounds begin tomorrow. The Hokage met Naruto's eyes steadily. You'll be participating at reduced capacity. The question is whether you want to proceed or withdraw. Naruto didn't hesitate. I'm not withdrawing. Even without your copying ability? Even sealed and weakened? Even then. Naruto's voice was hard. Orochimaru wanted to take me out of the fight. That means he's afraid of what I might do. If I withdraw now, I'm letting him win. The Hokage studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. You remind me of someone I knew once. Someone who never backed down, no matter the odds. Who? Your father. The words hung in the air between them, the first time anyone had ever directly acknowledged Naruto's parentage. I know you have questions, the Hokage continued. Questions I've been reluctant to answer. But after what you've been through, after what you're still willing to face, I think you've earned some truth. He reached into his robes and withdrew a small scroll, its surface marked with seals that seemed to shift and move when Naruto looked at them directly. This contains everything I can legally tell you about your heritage. Read it when you're ready. The old man stood, moving toward the door. And Naruto, whatever you discover, remember what you told me once. You're not what you carry. You're what you choose to become. The door closed behind him. Naruto held the scroll in trembling hands, feeling the weight of secrets about to be revealed. But for now, he set it aside. There would be time for truth later. Tomorrow, he had a fight to win. The preliminary rounds took place in a massive arena built into the tower's heart, a space designed for single combat, with observation platforms lining the upper walls where eliminated teams and village officials could watch. Teams that had passed the second phase gathered on the arena floor, sizing up their potential opponents. Naruto noted the Sand team, Gaara still radiating that unsettling presence, and several Konoha teams he recognized from the academy. There was the Sound team that had attacked them earlier, wearing expressions that suggested unfinished business. And there was the proctor, a sickly-looking jounin named Gecko Hate, whose persistent cough seemed at odds with his professional competence. Due to the large number of successful teams, Hate explained, we'll be conducting preliminary matches to reduce the field. One-on-one combat, no time limit. Matches end when one fighter is unconscious, dead, or surrenders. A screen on the wall flickered to life, displaying 2 names at random. Uchiha Sasuke vs. Akato Yoro. Sasuke, recovered enough from his curse seal treatment to compete, descended to the arena floor. His opponent was an older genin from Konoha, one of the ones Naruto didn't recognize, wearing dark glasses that concealed his eyes. The match was brutal but brief. Yoro possessed a chakra-draining technique that should have given him the advantage against a Sasuke whose curse seal was still unstable. But the Uchiha fought with a ferocity that transcended physical limitations, using pure taijutsu to overwhelm his opponent before the draining could take effect. Winner, Uchiha Sasuke. More matches followed. Sakura faced Yamanaka Ino in a battle of wills that ended in mutual knockout, both eliminated. Shikamaru defeated a Sound Kunoichi through tactical brilliance that belied his lazy demeanor. The Sand siblings each won their matches with disturbing ease. And then, Uzumaki Naruto vs. Inuzuka Kiba. Naruto descended to the arena floor, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes on his back. Kiba waited for him with a feral grin, his neendog Akamaru perched on his shoulder. Finally, Inuzuka said, I've been wanting to settle this since the academy. Let's see how tough you really are without all your fancy tricks. Naruto didn't respond. He was too busy cataloging his resources, depleted chakra reserves, no access to his copy techniques, limited physical conditioning after days of recovery. Begin! Kiba attacked immediately, his speed enhanced by his clan's beast mimicry techniques. Akamaru leaped from his shoulder, transforming midair into a duplicate of his master. 2 against 1. Both moving faster than Naruto could comfortably track. Naruto forced himself to think. What did he have that they didn't? Experience. Pain tolerance. And the stubborn refusal to lose that had carried him through every challenge he'd ever faced. The first blow caught him in the ribs, a spinning kick that sent him sliding across the arena floor. The second hit his shoulder, numbing his left arm. Kiba and Akamaru worked in perfect synchronization, their movements almost impossible to predict. Come on! Kiba taunted. I heard you were supposed to be impressive. Where's all that power now? He remembered what Guy had taught him about taijutsu, that true combat prowess came from the body, not from jutsu. He remembered Kurenai's lessons about mental discipline, about remaining calm under pressure. He remembered Anko's brutal training in the forest of death. And he remembered something else, a technique he'd copied long before the seal, one that was so fundamental it had become part of his base chakra configuration. The transformation technique. His hands moved, dog, boar, ram. Henge! Smoke billowed. When it cleared, there were now 2 Kibas and 2 Akamarus in the arena, indistinguishable from each other. What the? The real Kiba froze, his enhanced senses suddenly unable to distinguish friend from foe. Naruto, still transformed, attacked. The battle became chaos. Kiba and Akamaru couldn't coordinate when they couldn't identify their enemy. Their combo techniques fell apart. Their communication collapsed. And Naruto, despite his sealed powers, had one advantage they didn't: he knew exactly who he was. The finishing blow came when Kiba, frustrated beyond reason, used his ultimate technique, Fong Passing Fong, a spinning assault meant to devastate anything in its path. Naruto dropped his transformation at the last second, substituting himself with Akamaru using basic academy replacement. Kiba's attack struck his own nin dog. Both crashed to the ground, the technique's backlash leaving them stunned and helpless. Naruto stood over them, breathing hard, his body screaming with accumulated damage. Surrender, he said quietly. Kiba stared up at him with something between rage and respect. I give up. Winner, Uzumaki Naruto. The arena was silent for a long moment. Then, from the observation platform, applause broke out, scattered at first, then growing. Naruto raised his head and saw the third Hokage nodding with approval. Saw Kakashi's visible eye curved in satisfaction. Saw Sasuke watching with that calculating expression that meant he was reconsidering something fundamental. I did it, Naruto thought, as the medical nin rushed forward to tend his wounds. Without his power. Without the fox. Just himself. It wasn't enough, not for Orochimaru, not for the challenges that lay ahead. But it was a start. And for the first time since the seal had been applied, Naruto felt something like hope. Chapter 13, Unsealing. The sealing specialist arrived 3 days after the preliminaries. Jiraiya of the Sannin was nothing like Naruto had imagined. The legendary ninja was tall, white-haired, and carried himself with the casual confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove. He was also, apparently, a shameless pervert. The first thing Naruto witnessed upon meeting him was the man being chased from the women's bathhouse by an angry mob. Ah, you must be the kid with the sealing problem. Jiraiya straightened his clothes with practiced dignity, ignoring the shouts still echoing behind him. The old man sent me a message. Said you've got one of Orochimaru's specialties stuck to you. The 5 elements seal. Yeah, nasty piece of work. The Sannin approached, his manner shifting from lecherous to professional with unsettling speed. Let me see it. Naruto lifted his shirt, revealing the seal on his stomach. 2 sets of patterns were visible now, the original spiral of the 4th Hokage's work, and a newer, more jagged configuration that surrounded and suppressed it. Jiraiya studied the seal with narrowed eyes. Classic Orochimaru. Elegant, efficient, completely without conscience. His hand raised, fingers glowing with blue chakra. This might hurt. What are you? 5 fingers slammed into Naruto's stomach. 5 elements unseal. Pain erupted, different from the sealing, sharper and more immediate, but it passed quickly. Naruto felt something shift within him, barriers crumbling, power flooding back into pathways that had been blocked. His chakra surged. His copying ability flared to life, immediately absorbing information about Jiraiya's stance, his chakra configuration, his fighting style. There. The Sannin stepped back, examining his work. Good as new. Maybe better, some of that suppression might have been interfering with the original seal's efficiency. I can copy again. Naruto flexed his hands, feeling the familiar pulling sensation behind his eyes as he observed Jiraiya's movements. Thank you? Don't thank me yet. The legendary ninja's expression was serious now. Orochimaru didn't seal you randomly. He knows about your ability, probably has for a while. and he considers you enough of a threat to neutralize before going after his real target. Sasuke. Right. The cursed seal is designed to corrupt and control, to turn powerful shinobi into loyal servants. If Orochimaru wants Sasuke, it's because he sees potential that can be exploited. How do I stop him? Jiraiya studied Naruto for a long moment. You're asking the wrong question. You can't stop Orochimaru, not yet, probably not for years. He's one of the most dangerous shinobi alive, with resources and allies that would make most Kagen nervous. Then what's the right question? How do I get strong enough that he has to take me seriously? The Sannin smiled, a sharp, predatory expression. That's something I might be able to help with. Training with Jiraiya was unlike anything Naruto had experienced. Where Guy had focused on physical conditioning and Kurenai on mental discipline, the Sannin concentrated on one thing, the Ninetales chakra. Your copying ability is impressive, Jiraiya explained during their first real session. But it's limited by your own chakra's properties. You can reproduce forms and patterns, but you can't copy what your chakra fundamentally isn't suited for. Fire techniques. Naruto nodded. Lightning. They work, but not as well as when someone with natural affinity uses them. Exactly. But you have access to something that can bypass those limitations, the fox's chakra. It's raw, primordial energy that can take any shape. If you learn to channel it properly, you could copy techniques without the normal affinity restrictions. There's a catch, isn't there? Several. Jiraiya's expression was grave. The fox's chakra is corrosive. Use too much, and it damages your body. Use it carelessly, and it damages your mind. And if you lose control entirely. He trailed off meaningfully. The fox takes over. Potentially. The force seal is designed to prevent that, but no seal is perfect. The more you draw on the fox's power, the more strain you put on the containment. So how do I use it safely? Practice. Discipline. And learning to distinguish between your own will and the fox's influence. Jiraiya formed a hand seal, and a small amphibian appeared in a puff of smoke, a toad, watching Naruto with intelligent eyes. Summoning creatures can help. They're connected to natural energy that serves as a buffer against the fox's corruption. You want me to learn summoning? I want you to sign the toad contract. Same one your father signed. The Sannin produced a scroll, its surface covered in names and blood seals. It's not a guarantee of safety, but it's a step in the right direction. Naruto looked at the scroll, at the names of previous summoners, including one that had to be his father's, and felt something settle into place. Show me, he said. The final exam arrived with the weight of accumulated expectations. 1 month of training, divided between Jiraiya's instruction and recovery from his various injuries, had transformed Naruto in ways both visible and subtle. His chakra control had improved dramatically. His copy technique library had expanded to include several of Jiraiya's signature moves. And his ability to access the fox's power, while still developing, had reached a point where he could call on it in emergencies. The arena was packed with spectators, civilians and shinobi alike, gathered to watch the genin who represented Konoha's future. The feudal lords sat in positions of honor, their assessments carrying weight that could make or break careers. Naruto stood in the competitor's box, watching as the first match unfolded below. Uchiha Sasuke vs Sabaku and Ogara. The battle was everything the crowd had hoped for, fire and sand clashing in spectacular displays of power and technique. Sasuke had trained intensively during the month break, developing new techniques that pushed his Sharingan's capabilities. Gaara's sand defense proved nearly impenetrable, but the Uchiha's speed and precision began to find gaps. Then Sasuke unveiled his new technique. Chidori! Lightning gathered in his hand, the sound of 1,000 birds filling the arena. He moved, faster than anyone had seen him move, and struck Gaara's sand armor with enough force to penetrate. Blood flew. Gaara screamed, a sound of surprise and pain from someone who had clearly never experienced either. And something changed. The sand around Gaara began to move independently, forming patterns that seemed almost alive. His eyes went wide, then blank. And from his throat came a voice that wasn't quite human. Blood, my blood! Mother wants your blood! The arena erupted into chaos. The invasion had begun. Naruto didn't fully understand what was happening, wouldn't understand the full scope until much later, but he recognized the essential elements. The Sound and Sand villages had coordinated an assault on Konoha, timed to coincide with the final exam when the village's defenses were focused elsewhere. Enemy shinobi flooded the stadium. The VIP box exploded in violence as Orochimaru revealed himself, engaging the third Hokage in battle that would determine the village's fate. And Gaara, transformed into something monstrous, something that resonated with the thing inside Naruto in ways he didn't want to examine, fled into the forest with his siblings. Sasuke pursued. Naruto followed. The chase led them deep into Konoha's forests, past the training grounds and into wilderness where the trees grew old and the light grew dim. Gaara's transformations grew more extreme with each passing minute, first a clawed arm of sand, then a tail, then something that was barely recognizable as human. "He's like me," Naruto realized aloud, dodging a massive fist of sand that crushed a tree to splinters. "A Jinchuriki. He has a tailed beast inside him. The One Tail." Sasuke's Sharingan was active, tracking the monster's movements. "Shikaku, the sand spirit. That's what his sand techniques are, the beast's power manifested. Then I know how to fight him." Naruto stepped forward, drawing on everything he'd learned. His hands formed seals, combinations he'd copied from dozens of different sources, integrated into something approaching a personal style. Shadow clones appeared, spreading across the battlefield. Wind techniques howled through the air, disrupting Gaara's sand. Water jutsu created barriers and diversions. But it wasn't enough. Gaara's transformation continued, the monster growing larger with each passing moment. Soon it would be complete, and whatever emerged would be beyond anything Naruto could handle with conventional techniques. The fox, he thought. I need the fox's power. He reached inward, toward the cage where the nine tails waited. The fox was there, vast, ancient, radiating malevolence that pressed against the seal's barriers like a physical weight. Red eyes opened in the darkness of Naruto's mind, and a voice like grinding stone rumbled through his consciousness. "So you finally come to me. I need power," Naruto said, ignoring the fear that clawed at his throat. "Enough to stop that monster. And why should I help you? You who keep me caged. You who use my chakra like a tool while giving nothing in return. Because if I die, you die too." Naruto met those terrible eyes steadily. "And because stopping that monster is the right thing to do, regardless of what either of us wants." Silence stretched through the mindscape. Then the fox laughed, a sound that shook the foundations of Naruto's consciousness. "You amuse me, human. Very well. Take what you need. But remember, every time you draw on my power, you open the cage a little wider. Someday, you won't be able to close it again." Chakra flooded through Naruto, red and hot and overwhelming. His body changed, eyes going slitted, nails extending into claws. A shroud of visible energy surrounded him, taking shape into something that mirrored the monster he was fighting. "One tail," he noted distantly. "Gaara has more. I need more." He pushed further, drawing deeper on the fox's power. 2 tails formed. Then 3. The pain was extraordinary, like being burned from the inside out, but he held on, directing the energy into the techniques he'd copied and refined. "Summoning Jutsu!" Gamabunta appeared, the boss toad, massive beyond comprehension, filling the clearing with his bulk. The legendary summon looked down at Naruto with eyes that held centuries of wisdom. "So you're Jiraiya's new student," the toad rumbled. "And you've woken up that sleeping monster, I see. I need help." Naruto gasped, struggling to maintain control. "That thing. The One-Tail's host, in partial transformation." Gamabunta drew his massive knife. "Yes, I can see. This will be interesting." The battle that followed would later become legend. Toad against Tanuki, 2 legendary summons clashing with enough force to reshape the landscape. Naruto riding Gamabunta's head, directing the assault while fighting to maintain his grasp on the fox's power. Gaara, somewhere inside the monster, screaming in a voice that was equal parts rage and terror. In the end, it came down to a single moment of connection. Naruto reached Gaara, the real Gaara, the boy inside the monster, and struck with everything he had. Not a killing blow, but something more precise, a disruption of the transformation's chakra flow that forced the beast to recede. Gaara fell from the collapsing sand body, landing hard on a tree branch. Naruto landed across from him, the fox's chakra receding back into its cage. They faced each other, 2 Jinchuriki stripped of their monster's power, just boys exhausted and bleeding in the aftermath of combat. "Why?" Gaara's voice was raw. "Why did you fight so hard? Why do you care what happens to this village, to these people who hated you? Because they're not just the people who hated me." Naruto's voice was steady despite his exhaustion. "They're also the people who helped me, who taught me, who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. No one has ever believed in me. Then they were wrong." Naruto met Gaara's eyes, saw the loneliness there, the pain, the desperate hunger for connection that he recognized from his own mirror. "You're not your monster, Gaara. You're not what other people made you. You can choose who you want to be." For a long moment, Gaara was silent. Then, slowly, something changed in his expression, a crack in the armor of isolation he built around himself. "Choose," he whispered. "I can't choose." His siblings arrived then, carrying him away before the Konoha forces could catch up. But before they vanished into the trees, Gaara looked back at Naruto one last time. "Uzumaki Naruto. I will remember that name. And then they were gone. The invasion was repelled, but at terrible cost. The third Hokage fell, having sacrificed himself to seal away Orochimaru's arms and prevent the destruction of the village. His funeral was held 3 days later, under gray skies that seemed to share Konoha's grief. Naruto stood among the mourners, rain mixing with tears he didn't try to hide. The old man had been many things to him: Hokage, protector, the closest thing to a grandfather he'd ever known. He'd kept secrets, yes. He'd made choices that Naruto didn't fully understand. But he'd also cared, in his own complicated way. And now he was gone. The scroll he'd given Naruto remained unread in his apartment, the truth about his heritage, waiting for a moment when he could face it. That moment would come, eventually. But not today. Today was for grief. Today was for remembering. And tomorrow, the work of becoming Hokage would continue. The memorial stone at Training Ground 7 had a new name carved into its surface. Naruto visited it the morning after the funeral, alone with the dawn and the weight of loss. He traced the characters of the third's name with his fingers, feeling the stone's cold permanence. I know you're there, he said quietly. Kakashi emerged from the trees, his posture uncharacteristically somber. He came to stand beside his student, looking down at the stone with his single visible eye. I used to come here every day, the Jounin said. After my teammates died, I'd stand here for hours, talking to names carved in rock. It felt like the only way to stay connected. Did it help? Sometimes. Other times it just made the loss feel more real. Kakashi was silent for a moment. The Hokage spoke highly of you, in his final days. He believed you had the potential to surpass everyone who came before. I don't want to surpass anyone. Naruto's voice was rough. I just want to protect the people I care about. And I failed. You didn't fail. You fought a monster that should have been far beyond your capabilities. You saved countless lives with your actions during the invasion. Kakashi's hand found Naruto's shoulder. The Hokage didn't die because you failed. He died because that was the choice he made, to protect his village, whatever the cost. The will of fire. Exactly. The belief that Konoha's children are all part of one family, worth any sacrifice to protect. The Jounin's eye curved slightly. He passed that will to you, Naruto. To all of us. It's our job to carry it forward. They stood together in silence, watching the sun rise over the village that had lost so much and would have to rebuild. Kakashi-sensei. Naruto's voice was steady now. I'm going to become Hokage. Not because I want acknowledgement anymore. Not because I have something to prove. But because this village needs someone who will protect it, who will make the hard choices and pay the prices so that others don't have to. That's a heavy burden to take on. I know. Naruto looked up at the Hokage monument, at the four faces gazing down at the village they'd led. Someday, his face would be carved there too. He was certain of it now. But it's my burden to carry. And I'm ready. Kakashi studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Then let's get to work. We have a lot to teach you. The village of Konoha spread below them as they walked back toward its heart, wounded but healing, grieving but enduring. The will of fire burned in every citizen who chose to rebuild, every shinobi who stood ready to defend, every child who dreamed of becoming something more. Naruto walked among them, one of them, connected by bonds that went deeper than blood. His journey was far from over. There were challenges ahead that would dwarf everything he'd faced so far, enemies stronger than Orochimaru, questions about his heritage that would reshape his understanding of himself, and the long, difficult path toward the dream he'd carried since childhood. But he was ready. Not because he was strong, he wasn't, not yet. Not because of the fox, or the copying, or any of it. Just because he'd decided. That was all. It turned out that was enough to start.